taking into account its role as a growth driver and also in terms of this innovative tool. It is the Commission going to the market and also linked to reforms, objectives, investments. The importance of this event, this is the second year that we organize it, has to do with hearing all the experts in this facility with regard to its design, its execution, implementation, the current moment, and also with regard to the results associated to the facility and the investments that are being carried out. The Recovery and Resilience Facility represents more than 12% of the GDP of Spain, 111 reforms, many milestones and measures, and it is the moment to summarize, reflect, gather the ideas regarding the execution and implementation of the plan. We're right now midway of the Resilience and Recovery Facility. We will have 3 round tables during the event, all of them very interesting, with experts, high-level experts, and we will be looking into the acceleration of the green transition, improving competitiveness of Spain, and executing the plan according to its forecast and design. So I encourage you and invite you all to enjoy this event, and it is a pleasure for me to be able to give the floor to the Minister for Economy, and then we will have the intervention by the European Commissioner. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Lucas.
Thank you, Lucas. Thank you to the Commission for the joint organization and invitation to this event. It is a true pleasure for me to be here with my friend Paolo Gentiloni and with all of you to be able to celebrate the Resilience and Recovery Plan. I think this is a great reason to gather. It's been an honor also to be here at this event, and I would like to thank all participants, all moderators, because the exchange of reflections and point of view right now is one of the best ways of enriching our understanding of the impact of the plan. The everyday obligations, the pace of our lives sometimes hinder the possibility of reflecting on in-depth matters such as the impact of the recovery plan that we will be talking about today. It is a country-specific project. We have designed it as such, and it is great to see experts from different spheres bringing their reflections with regard to the plan, as with the joint work carried out to be able to achieve the objectives set for the country. In the different roundtables, we will have different profiles, different experts from different institutions, spheres, with the participation of trade unions, technicians, business organizations, where the plan has set very ambitious objectives. And of course, it is a challenge for all of these stakeholders and for us. To all of them, thank you. Thank you for their involvement in the design, in the implementation and execution of the plan. The deployment is a joint challenge, and the results are already here, as I will say and explain now. My first message with regard to the impact of the plan is that the execution of the plan up to now has been balanced and ambitious. Ambitious because we already have execution results until the end of February. It shows that the funds are reaching companies, the real economy, and they are already contributing towards the territorial and social cohesion of our country. At the end of February, as I was saying, we have called on 60 billion out of the 70 billion that were included in the first phase of the plan. So 86% of the total amount of the first phase funds already opened, called, with approximately 1.5 billion every month. Out of the total amount, two-thirds, 41 billion, correspond to the general administration of the state and the rest to the autonomous communities. They have increased their participation little by little. Out of these funds, approximately 32.5 billion have been solved, so approximately 47% have already been solved in this first phase. 47% of the funds have reached the real economy. This is a key message. Forward-looking, we are more or less at halfway of the game, so to speak, and this is relevant, taking into account that after 3 years of the execution, the first half of the game, 2021, the first year, was just the launching of the plan, and the real execution started really at the end of 2021 and beginning of 2022. Half game, half of the funds executed, and more than 86% of the total funds already called upon. The deployment is also being balanced. I would like to highlight that from the design of the plan, this was carried out with a double approach. On the one hand, large strategic projects, the PERTE, connected and electric vehicle, naval, to be able to drive other sectors and the value chain. In this regard, we can also mention the second objective that has to do with granularity, looking into the needs of companies with different sizes and specifically SMEs. We can say it is balanced because more than 40% of the executed amount, approximately 30.5 billion, have reached our SMEs, including also freelancers and households. Within this, the digital kit amounts to 1.3 billion, but as I said, 13.5 billion have reached the SMEs. They are concentrated in the main aspects: sustainability, industrial action, among others. It is clear that these data support the good progress of the plan, its implementation, and that the funds are also reaching our productive fabric, the real economy, and this means real opportunities for investment in our companies. Apart from the execution data, we can go beyond. We can see how these data are being translated into a real positive impact in our economy. We can see this from different points of view. For instance, productivity. If we look at the evolution of the productivity in Spain, looking at the data from 2018, we can see that the shift in the productive structure associated to the impact of the plan entails an increase by 30% of productivity. We can see this in terms of employment. For instance, this huge growth, this creation of employment, is concentrated in qualitative terms in high-value fields such as ICTs or research and development. We have the creation of employments in ICTs, for instance, amounting to approximately 52%. This is a clear evidence of the impact of the plan. I would also like to mention the results published by the Commission in the midterm assessment of the plan that show the positive impact of the plan in Spain. GDP has grown 0.4% in the European Union, 9% has been the growth in Spain. The reduction of the unemployment rate would be 0.2 in the European Union and threefold in Spain. In fact, we can see the positive impact of the plan and the differences in terms of Spain. With regard to the future, the Commission expects the plan to boost the GDP by 3.5 points in 2025. And I think that this figure is quite conservative because it doesn't include an element that is difficult to assess, which is the impact in the other European countries and how this is also going to have an effect on Spain, and also the positive impact associated to the structural reforms included within the plan that are one of the keys with regard to potential midterm growth. In this regard, it is clear, just looking at the data and the forecasts that have been set, looking at the execution and impact data of the plan, this is a project that not only represents a great opportunity for Spain, but also it has been taken profit of and turned into a positive impact for the country. When we talk about positive impact, we focus on data, and it is difficult to be more abstract with regard to this data. Which would have been the situation without the recovery plan? Which would have been the counterfactual in our country if we wouldn't have had this European joint response, unprecedented as the one that occurred after the pandemic with the Recovery and Resilience Plan? Which would be the current situation? It is clear that this facility allows us to reflect on the speed, on the pace of reforms here in Spain, identifying long-term challenges, as when we designed the recovery plan, taking into account these objectives through the different 70 billion disbursements during the first phase, allow us to progress forward, implementing these reforms according to a pace that is completely unprecedented for the Spanish economy. It is important to highlight also the pace of these investments. The reach of the investments carried out is completely unprecedented in the history of the Spanish economy, except for about 40 years ago when Spain accessed and joined the European Union. Another important aspect has to do with the fact that these investments are driving private investments. According to our assessments, together with BBVA and other financial institutions, when we compare the companies that have received funds to the ones that haven't, these companies, the first ones, have more access to funds, and this leads to their own investments being carried out. So these investments are also driving private investments. With regard to the future, and I think that taking into account our experience managing the plan, procedures, regulations, allow us to identify certain improvements with regard to reducing the regulatory charge, follow-up procedures, and also this helps us taking into account we're halfway there to improve the procedures with regard to the remaining time. This leads to the following reflection. If we look beyond 2026 or beyond the end of the recovery plan, I think that we are all fully aware that the European Union is obliged to reinvent itself, taking into account fast developments in terms of artificial intelligence, the evolution of technology, and also new demands associated to economic security in this highly complex environment. We need to reform, we need to invest, and these needs will persist after 2026. And we will need to have another joint approach as the one that has been enabled by the Recovery and Resilience Facility and Plan, a midterm horizon that would allow the European Union to maintain its competitiveness, favoring the success of our social and economic model. And we have to be able to do this beyond 2026. We have to take profit of the lessons associated to the implementation of the Recovery and Resilience Plan, and this will allow us to continue move forward in the European project. I would like to conclude by thanking all of you for your participation, for your contributions to this event on the impact of the recovery plan. And I would like to finish on a positive note by saying that apart from the macroeconomic data that we have in Spain, we can consider the country to be, with regard to 2023 and the forecast for 2024, 2025, a positive outlier. We're having positive growth here in the country. In 2023, we grew fivefold compared to the euro area, and the forecasts are also particularly positive. We will grow above the growth of our main partners. And I want to highlight that we have a Spanish model in which growth is associated to certain elements that normally are not associated to strong growth, with the moderation of prices. Today we have the publication of the inflation data for February. This is joint to fiscal responsibility strategy. We expect that for the end of 2024, the debt will have been reduced around 20 percentage points compared to the GDP. This is also a social cohesion model with the reduction of inequalities. It leads to a higher efficiency in terms of energy consumption associated to decarbonization, and also joined to historical data in terms of the competitiveness of Spanish companies. So I think that this model, this virtuous circle, can be highlighted. And I would like to link it to today's event. This would not be possible without the Recovery and Resilience Plan, without the joint effort that is being carried out in Europe. It is a country-specific project. It is part of a joint European answer that demonstrates that together we can carry out large projects and reach ambitious objectives. I hope you have a fruitful event. I hope that in a year we can come back again and have a positive balance drawn from the implementation of the plan. The second phase, with the implementation of the addenda that is associated to the mobilization of additional 80 billion in credits associated to the modernization of projects in our country in favor of a better country and a stronger economy. Thank you very much.
Buenos días, Minister Cuerpo, dear Carlos, distinguished guests, colleagues of the European Commission, señoras y señores, great pleasure to be in Madrid, and many thanks to the EU representation for organizing with the Spanish authorities this second event on the implementation of the plan in Spain. We have reached, indeed, halfway point in the life of the plan, and what a journey it has been. You may remember that 4 years ago, more or less, it was this week, I think, the World Health Organization declared the pandemic, the coronavirus, as a pandemic. And Spain, with Italy, were among the first and hardest hit countries in Europe, both in terms of the tragic human toll. We all remember the dramatic situation here in Madrid, and for the enormous economic impact of the pandemic. Spain, for example, Spain's GDP collapsed by 20% in the first quarter of this pandemic. So without a strong European response, this crisis would have gone down in history as the great fragmentation, meaning the great difference, divergence in the single market and among European countries. But Europe, I think, rose to the moment and agreed on an historic plan, Next Generation EU, backed for the first time by common debt issuance, with at its heart what we call the Recovery and Resilience Facility. In itself, the announcement of Next Generation EU had an immediate effect on markets and narrowed sovereign debt spreads at the time. Member states then set to work on preparing ambitious recovery and resilience plan. We all agreed that the goal was more than a simple rebound. It was a chance to build back better, to embark on a path of more sustained and sustainable growth and reforms. And I have to say that from the beginning, Spain showed that it was determined to seize this opportunity, to grab the recovery bull by the horns, so to speak. Spain was among the first countries to submit its plan, see it approved and received the first round of pre-financing in the summer of 2021. This was a testament both to the quality of the Spanish plan and to the excellent cooperation between our services and the Spanish authorities. And then Spain doubled down on its ambition when it came to revising the plan last year. Over the course of last year, it applied for the full loan component of the facility on top of the grants and added the new chapter, as you know, of Repower EU, meaning that the plan more than doubled its size. So Spain's plan, El Proyecto País, as Carlos defined it, is now worth 163 billion. That is a whopping 12% of GDP, and in per capita terms, it means a European investments of more than 3,000 euros for every Spanish citizen, the highest level in the EU. It is an extraordinary display of European common commitment, of a Europe that stays true to its values and makes good of its promise of economic convergence. And Spain has made an impressive start with its recovery and resilience plan, already fulfilling 121 milestones and receiving 38 billion in grants. You are investing in renewables, in digitalizing SMEs, in public-private partnership for strategic projects, the so-called PERTES. Over the course of today, we will hear many stories of how these investments are transforming the country. The plan is opening new opportunities for Spanish businesses and create new jobs here. And speaking of jobs, let me also say a few words on the labor market reform, which was connected to the plan. In December 21, Spain adopted very important labor market reform to reduce the use of fixed-term contracts and increase permanent contracts. Because Spain was something of an outlier at European level with a very high share of temporary contracts, especially in the private sector, those with new contracts. The results of the reform so far are very encouraging. The share of fixed-term contracts has fallen substantially over the last couple of years, which means more job security for Spanish workers and more incentives for firms to invest in developing their skills over time. Other important reforms aim to modernize the tax system, digitalize the public administration, and improve the pension system. So Spain has gotten off a strong start. I believe you say lo que bien empieza, bien acaba. In Italian we say it also. It's chi ben comincia è a metà dell'opera. But it is important to know that the 2026 deadline of the RRF is a strict one. There are little under 3 years to go, and in many ways the second half of its life will be more challenging than the first, as investments reach a critical stage in their implementation. So it is crucial to maintain the same level of commitment and ambition shown so far and accelerate implementation. We know the challenges involved, especially when it comes to absorbing such massive sums. It will be crucial to continue to strengthen administrative capacity to maximize the absorption of RRF funds. Just as important will be to enhance coordination among authorities at all levels and to improve the communication of funding opportunities. The opportunity is simply too great to be missed. Our simulations indicate that these investments, as Carlos just said, could boost the level of Spanish GDP up to 3.5 in 25. And we should bear in mind that these estimates do not include, indeed, the positive impact of structural reforms, so the overall boost to growth should be still larger over the long term. In the first half of this life, Next Generation EU has already proved itself to be a success story for the EU as a whole. I mentioned the effect the RRF had in calming the markets and the speed with which we were able to get these funds flowing, just thanks to one single data. In 2019, the Commission was borrowing in financial markets 400 million. In 2021, borrowing was 124 billion. So from 400 million to 124 billion. And this is largely the amount of borrowing that we have every year in these years from the Commission. But let me mention 3 other examples of the impact. First, the RRF played an important role in sustaining the robust rebound after the pandemic. The European economy returned to its pre-pandemic output level by the third quarter of 21, so very quickly, and sooner than expected. And this was very different to what happened in the wake of the financial crisis, when it took 7 years for output to fully recover. And then we all remember how strong was the growth until the third quarter of 2022 in Europe, stronger than in US, stronger than in China. Then the war, the invasion came, and the picture changed. But I think as far as the rebound is concerned, we should not forget this great impact. Second, so the impulse is also supporting economic convergence and cohesion in the EU. It is having stronger effects in the southern and eastern member states than in the Nordic and Central Europe countries. So the growth map changed a little bit after the RRF, of course, not only for the RRF, also the energy crisis had an impact in this new growth map of the Union. Second, the plan at European health level has helped to preserve and actually increase public investment. This too stands in stark contrast to the disastrous experience of the post-financial crisis, when public investment collapsed. The EU public investment ratio is expected to rise to 3.5% of GDP in 25, up from 3% in 2019. Around half of that increase is related to EU funding, particularly the RRF. And third, the plan brought a new dimension to EU funding instruments by making the financing of investment conditional on the implementation of reforms. The RRF has encouraged member states to tackle long-standing challenges, what we call in our language the country-specific recommendation. As you know, this country-specific recommendation through the RRF became something with teeth, and not only with call to member states. In conclusion, the success of the whole Next Generation programme, and with it the possibility and the need, in my view, that similar schemes may be implemented in the future, hinges on the success of the most important plans. And Spain is, with Italy, the most important plan from a quantitative point of view and also qualitative. Because the size, the ambition of the Spanish plan, and because of its weight in the EU economy. So making a success of the RRF in these remaining years should not be given for granted. It should be the #1 priority. It must be perceived as a national mission, one that unites the country and to which everyone is called to contribute, from the institution at national, regional, and local level to businesses, social partners, and civil societies. And these annual events are a great opportunity to bring together the various stakeholders, to take stock of the progress made so far and see what can be improved. And from our side, I can only reiterate our commitment as the European Commission to stand by your side every step of the way. Muchas gracias.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you also to those of you who are following us via the YouTube channel of the European Commission. My name is Alejandra Olcese from El Mundo. I'm specialized in economic information, and normally I'm in charge of covering the recovery plan. So for me, it is an honor to be here moderating this roundtable. During this roundtable, out of the 3 that we're going to have today, we will be talking about the green reforms and investments of the recovery plan and how Spain is moving forward towards a green transition with regard to its consumption and production model, thanks to the boost of the Next Generation funds. The green transition, together with the digital transformation, with the social and territorial cohesion and the gender equality, one of the main pillars of the recovery plan. For this reason, it amounts to 40% of the 163 billion euros for Spain in terms of subsidies and loans. We're talking about 65 billion euros of green investment between 2021 and 2026. Taking into account the plan, we're not only going to talk about investments, we're also going to be talking about reforms that will be key for the energy and green sectors of our country. To have a fair and inclusive energy transition is one of the 10 drivers of the plan. On the one hand, we need to develop the efficient, competitive, decarbonized energy sector. It has to mobilize significant private investment in a stable framework. And on the other hand, we need to foster the renewable potential of the country and the existing value chains so that we're more competitive in the domestic market and in the export market. For this reason, we are implementing the different PERTEs, the decarb, VC, agri-food, naval, aeronautics, as with the Repower EU strategy and the new financial instruments, among them ICO Green, that is the largest one with 22 billion euro. To be able to talk about the achievements of Spain and the challenges that lie ahead, we have six guests. First of all, we have John Groisar, who is the General Director for the Institute for Diversification and Saving of Energy. It belongs to the Ministry for Ecological Transition and Demographic Challenge, and it has a very important role to play with regard to the execution of the funds of this ministry. John is an engineer in energy and the environment by the University of Cambridge. He's got a master's in CSR, and he's worked in the renewable sector in many countries and in low carbon energy field. He's worked here with different public positions at the Balearic government and also at the DAA. He has led the elaboration of the recovery plan. He is also an expert in the management of the hydrogen plan. He's participated in the integrated national plan for energy and climate. So, John, welcome. Thank you for being with us today. The first thing I wanted to ask you is, where do you think that Spain stands with regard to the implementation of reforms and green investments of the recovery plan, and what can we say is next in the Spanish agenda? Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you to the Commission for organizing this event. I think that the Minister and the Commissioner have set the context with regard to the Recovery and Resilience Plan. We can do better and go further, it is for sure, but the calls, the tenders are being great, 1.5 billion per month. This is something unprecedented for the Spanish public administration. The Commissioner was talking about the 121 milestones that have been achieved. And to know if we're going well, we need to compare this with other elements. And if we compare ourselves with other member states, we're going well. If we compare ourselves with our capacities as country, I think the pace is very relevant. With regard to the green transition, the matter of this panel, 40% of the recovery plan is focused on the green sector, and the whole plan considers the environmental strategy as key to be able to change the productive model. We're talking about circular economy, water, energy, but we're talking about industrial sectors such as automotive, agriculture. We're also talking about healthcare, different sectors. These are the pillars for the energy transition with a cross-cutting approach. We also have the climate tagging, the green labels that have become mainstream with regard to the different policies. The environmental objectives are also social and economic objectives, and the policies, the ministries are also changing. Now the green element is part of all these strategies. And what is this for? What is the real impact of all of this? We can talk about real projects or perception. Perception. Spain, thanks to the regulatory modifications, the reforms, has moved from being in position number 24 for renewables investment to position number 8. According to Bloomberg, number 5 among top 10, according to other analysis. Well, 1 out of 5 projects are being carried out here, leaders in terms of green climate strategies. So we are becoming a leader in this sphere. In reality, on site, this is what motivates us more at the Institute. Real changes that we are perceiving. Industries that are, for instance, abandoning natural gas in cogeneration, replacing it by renewable sources. This is more efficient. 130 energy communities with many citizens, many SMEs that are saving in terms of energy. Self-consumption also. It is now mainstream. 4 years ago, we launched a survey. The majority of people, of companies, were not even interested in solar panels. And now, according to consultancies, the majority of companies are opting for this source of energy. We have many research and development projects in green hydrogen. We're becoming a hub in this technology, and we also have in-depth geothermal projects, up to 2,400 projects that we can see on our webpage. Next steps, the Commissioner and the Minister were talking about the addenda of the plan, the Repower EU as a clear strategy. Our next step is the value chain, technology produced and fabricated here in Spain, and of course to continue managing these funds involving the public sector, the private sector, and learning from the 3 years that have just gone by. Our next guest is Cristina Lobillo. She's the director of the working group for the platform of the energy at the European Commission. She's a lawyer. She has degrees in Spain, Belgium, and from the Harvard Business School. She has wide experience at the European Commission. She joined it in 2004 from the Ministry for Agriculture, Fisheries and Food. Since 2014, she's held different positions at the European Commission. She's an expert until the current position that she holds. Cristina, welcome. Thank you for being here. I wanted to ask you, how green is the Spanish recovery plan, and also with regard to Repower EU? Considering that you have a cross-cutting approach, how do you compare our plan with other member states' plan when it comes to contributing to the European Green Pact? Thank you to the Commission for organizing this second event on the RRF. I represent the Commission at this panel, and I would like to set the European context with regard to the Spanish plan. I would like to start with a statement that might seem obvious. The energy transition is unstoppable. It is clear for us at the European Union, but I think it is clear around the world, especially since the signing of the Paris Agreement. We have a firm, stable framework, the Fit for 55 package. We have different initiatives, and we also have the Recovery and Resilience Facility. It is important to highlight the efforts carried out by the European Union in the latest years, especially since the invasion of Ukraine, and the efforts that have been made to be able to replace the fuels coming from transition and to be able to accelerate the energy transition. I would like to provide some figures. In 2023, renewables with regard to the electric energy mix represented 37%, and this year, 2023, this stands at 45%. We hope that this figure will continue increasing in 2024. Last year, we increased the installed capacity of renewables by 73 additional gigawatts, and for 2024, we expect to install 79 additional installed capacity in wind and PV. We have also reduced the demand for gas, and we are starting the implementation of the recovery and resilience plans. As you know, we have the 65 billion figure, and to be able to go into detail with regard to energy, 60 billion euros will be devoted to the development of clean technologies, renewables, and hydrogen, and 100 billion to be able to increase the energy efficiency of public and private buildings. Spain has to play a leader role within this effort, and I want to state that Spain is the main recipient of RRF funds. This figure is important. It has been mentioned before, but the fact of having Spain receiving more than 80 billion euros in subsidies with the Repower addenda, more than 83 billion in loans, this positions Spain in leadership, clearly a front runner in this sphere. Within the national plan, different measures devoted to energy transition, and among them, renewable hydrogen. It is one of the strongest and most special components of the plan. In total, within the plan that have been approved by the Council, there are more than 13.5 billion euros devoted to hydrogen. If we compare this to the 7 billion invested by the US, we can see that we are considering hydrogen very important. In Spain, more than 3.6 billion will be devoted to the development of green hydrogen technologies. So I think that, to your question, Spain is one of the countries that is devoting the highest quantities to the development of green policies in terms of energy. And I also would like to highlight the national plans for climate and energy. They have become an important tool to be able to achieve the Repower objectives and the RRF objectives. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, we've already seen the approach and the vision of the public administration. We cannot forget that this plan also has an impact on workers and companies. The social dimension is very important. We have a representative from the trade unions. Fernando Rujan is vice secretary at the trade union UGT. He was born in Madrid. He joined UGT in 1988. He's a professor in labor law at the Autonomous University in Madrid. He's also a collaborator with the Association of Lawyers of Madrid, and he's part of the Royal Academy of Law of Spain. Welcome, Fernando. How is the Spanish recovery plan contributing to the just transition? What is being implemented so that we don't leave anybody behind with regard to professional skills and the affordability of energy? Thank you. Thank you very much. I feel somewhat overwhelmed of being here, taking into account the experts and all the important people that are here, people from the public administration, from the European Commission, and really thankful because, well, it is important that we know the opinion of trade unions with regard to this strategic plan that represents more than 12% of the Spanish GDP. What is the vision of the trade union, the General Workers' Union, UGT, regarding this strategy? This is a plan that stems from the pandemic, this strong crisis, as the Commissioner has reminded all of us. We have to remind the 4 pillars: the digital transition, the energy transition, gender equality, and social and territorial cohesion. And I have to highlight the last aspect, social cohesion. In the speeches that we've heard by the Minister of Economy and the Commissioner, I've missed stronger reference to the position of workers and how workers are going to be included in all of this. The Commissioner has mentioned the impact of the labor reform, the transformation of temporary contracts into permanent contracts, also taking into account the negotiations with social stakeholders. We mentioned large figures. We've mentioned budget, investments, and also the term just transition. But I think that we don't mention that often what is going to happen to those people that are going to be affected by these transitions, especially with regard to social cohesion. Well, for instance, we have coal mining activities that are going to cease. We have also heard about nuclear plants, and we need to reskill, retrain, reposition workers. We need to find niches for new employment so that this just transition really doesn't leave anybody behind. One of some components, especially with regard to number 10, looks into this when it talks about reskilling workers that will be affected by these transitions. In component 10, as I was saying, the search for employment, short-term, fostering levers to be able to allow workers to access these positions, boosting economic growth and also respecting the environmental aspects of those areas. Yesterday, I was in Valencia at an event organized by my trade union with regard to the transformation of the automotive industry. It is important to highlight a few aspects with regard to the automotive industry in Spain. We are producer number 8 worldwide of automobiles, number 2 in Europe, number 1 with regard to industrial vehicles, and we don't have white labels, our own brands. The investments are being carried out, and they're so strong that they allow Spain to be in the positions that I've mentioned. And this is associated to social dialogue within companies. Not by chance, my trade union is a majority trade union in many automotive production plants. We have been capable of being flexible with regard to the implementation of labor measures. This is not by chance that we are country number 3 with regard to productivity in the automotive industry, and that the labor conditions are positive in terms of working time and wages. With this, I am defending the role played by labor unions with regard to the Recovery and Resilience Plan and its implementation, and also with regard to the PERTE plans, because we have to play a leading role in what we know how to do. and we should have a larger participation. I am referring to 4 essential elements. On the one hand, representation and negotiation, workers who are being represented by trade unions, and when we can work and act, we can make companies more competitive as we make positions kinder. Sorry that I'm interrupting you, but you have about 1 minute. We have to reskill workers. We also have to, this is an important role, to focus on vigilance and oversight of what is being done in companies so that results are positive. And finally, we want to participate more in social dialogue roundtables. And in the PERTES, we would like to be able to participate in an anticipated manner in the design of these plans. I would like to talk for longer. I really like talking, but I just wanted to highlight the role that we have at trade unions. To be able to also hear from other stakeholders, we have Cristina Rivero. She's the director of the Department for Industry, Energy, Environment and Climate of the Business Organizations Confederation. Cristina has developed her career in the field of energy and environment. She has been the representative of the Spanish electric system, and she's participated and worked in different international organizations and agencies as the Framework Convention of the United Nations for Climate Change. She's also part of the European CEOE, and she participates in the Experts Platform for Sustainable Finances of the European Commission. Thank you for being here. How is the recovery plan contributing to the green transition of Spanish industry, and which challenges are being solved? Thank you, Alejandra. Thank you to the representation of the European Commission for their invitation. I'm more pragmatic and I go straight to the point. I don't really enjoy talking for too long, and I'm going to try to have a short, clear message. Which challenges have been solved by PERTE plans? We have many challenges and problems lying ahead. I wouldn't say that we've solved them all, but I think they have been a way of fostering movement. This large package has been mobilized with regard to administration and also with regard to different sectors. Our president organized a European project department as the plan was being approved, because we considered this to be an opportunity that couldn't be left aside. We've encountered different barriers.
But in the green transition, sometimes we just focus in the decarbonization, but this entails the waste management, the air quality, and I do believe that PERTES are really contributing to the mobilization of alliances that we had never seen before. This public-private partnership has never been seen before, for example, with regards to circular economy. It's impressive to see the amount of synergies that we are seeing coming up thanks to the circular economy among different sectors or companies that had never been in touch before. Also with the administration, as I said before, the statements of interest before in the face of the PERTES, it was very impressive to see the number of projects that all the sectors could come up with. We also did a survey among the different companies in order for them to tell us where we could invest all those millions of euros, and we found there were many initiatives that they could bring to the table. And I think this was a very interesting incentive based on the green aspect of things, because do no significant harm is an important principle, but also having clear goals for 2050 is something important, and it doesn't sometimes look so, but we see that all sectors have very clear in their minds what we need to do by 2050. And there's no business in this country that has not reconsidered their business on the basis of a green idea, of a green concept. And so in addition to the PERTES, we have the offshore, we have the decarbonization of the industry, the renovation with renewable energies, energy storage, etc. So sometimes we tend to focus only in the decarbonization, but we have reduced the 40% of our emissions since the beginning of the century. We have reached 70% of emissions due to the renewable energies, but also greatly in the field of the industry by using affordable resources. Now we have ahead of us the difficult part, how to decarbonize industry processes that cannot be decarbonized. And PERTES cannot support the industry in this aspect because of the deadlines. And this is one of the challenges that we are seeing. There's no for the big projects that have a very big impact in the decarbonization, the deadlines are too short, but we will see a reduction of 13,000 tons of emissions thanks to the already carried out PERTE plans. I don't know if you've seen the number of hydrogen conferences that we are seeing in Spain just in one single month. It's quite scary even to see all this drive that we see in the country. And I'm sure that we will be placing Spain for the first time in our history from the industry perspective, from the business perspective, and this is something that is very encouraging for us. And everything related to the circular economy, PERTE, we have a lot of work ahead of us to design more ecological products, more environmentally friendly products, and I think that the PERTE will be a big help in this sense. But I cannot skip saying that the grants are very good, but what we need to have a zero net industry is a longer term projects. We need an industrial policy that is robust in the whole of the European Union and a regulatory framework that is that gives certainty because we might find issues such as the industry permits that do not allow us to speed up as much as we would have liked to. Because there are certain guarantees that the system offers that are not fully in line with the needs that we have at the moment. Now, we want to move from the theoretical part to the practical part. So we're going to talk to Víctor Viñuales. He is the executive director of the Foundation Ecología y Desarrollo, ECODES. He is a sociologist and co-founder and executive director of this foundation. He's also part of the World Pact, Global Pact, and Global Compact, and he is also a professor in the IE Business School for 14 years and member of the counseling board of many bodies. How do you think these investments foreseen in the plan should be implemented, and what uses should be given to the financial mechanisms of the plan in the green area? I would like to start by quoting Cicero, and he said that gratitude is the most important virtue and probably the mother of all virtues. And I would like to mention this, so I can start by thanking the whole of the ecosystem made by politicians, technicians, business people, trade unionists, and all the people who are working to push this opportunity brought by the Next Gen EU funds. Sometimes these words are not spoken out loud, but I would like to highlight this because this is very important in order to really accomplish the goals that Cristina mentioned a minute ago, but also to make Europe better. When we look at the present and at the past. Saint Augustine said, when we compare between saints, we are ranking well in general, but we need to have a broader perspective. For instance, a friend of mine bought a car and he received the aid 2 years after the purchase. So we see that there are many public servants that are using 10 hours of their working time to just handle one small aid aimed at an individual somewhere. So I would say that we need to develop different paths for different things. It's not the same thing, a small grant of 3,000 euro than a big grant for a big business or industry. I would also like to see a big cultural change in order to diminish this culture of mistrust that we still see in the public administration towards the citizenship. Indeed, there are certain citizens that are malicious, but we cannot talk about a majority of the citizens acting with bad purposes. Now, there are certain things that we have seen improved in the recent years. For instance, you can get your passport in 15 minutes. And I would like to see that these people who are doing the job much faster now raise awareness among the rest of the public administration services. We see also that there is certain resistance from the part of the farmers, of the small municipalities. And I would like to see a big investment in the cultural transition. We need to make a regulatory transition, yes. Environmental transition, yes. But what about the cultural transition? Are we really investing in convincing people that this is the desirable path to follow? I don't think we're doing enough there, and I think it is a problem. Thirdly, I would like to treat things that are different differently. Only the region of Catalonia has created an amount for rehabilitation for vulnerable families. If you act on a first to arrive, first to when basis, you will be leaving many people in need aside. If you just let the electrical companies work on their own, they will be fast. But if you let the citizens find their alliances and get together to move things forward, this is going to be much slower. Looking at the amount devoted to loans, I would like to say that those loans are really positive. 30 years with 10 years of a saved period at the beginning of the repayment of the loan. We're seeing this is very positive. In the cities, we are seeing that there are electrical buses. There's a great development of the e-commerce, and this involves many things. I would like to see a program, a plan for a healthy city that uses the technology to move the internal combustion engines away from the city centers. This would be very important for our economy and for our cities. For the rehabilitation and the loans, we see that there are certain flaws in the processes. Sometimes the neighbors' communities lack the trust among the neighbors. And I would like the public administration to have a certain common guarantee to support the neighbors' communities to push forward their projects. We see that we are lagging behind. There's a lot of money, but we are still working with very old methods. And I think that we should, there were in the Basque Country last year, we saw temperatures as high as 45.6 degrees Celsius during the summer. And I think that we should adapt our housing, because we will see otherwise that energy poverty will not only related to the cold months, but also to the hot months in our country. I will end with Virgil, who used to say, those who believe they can will be able to do it. And I will suggest that we profit from this opportunity from all the actors' positions, and we believe that we are capable of doing things, because if we believe we are capable, we will be able to accomplish things. Well, just to finish this initial round of questions, and before opening the floor to the audience, we will be moving on to the beneficiaries of the plan. In this case, we have Javier Fernandez de Manzanos. He is the Chief Technology Officer of Nordex. They design, sell, and create wind generators. He is experienced in the industrial sector. He started in the automobile sector in 1996, and then he moved on to the renewable energies in the EHN business. He was in charge of the industrialization and support when the company was already called Acciona Wind Power. And now he's a Chief Technology Officer in Nordex, as I said before. As a final beneficiary, how would you say that the PERTE has contributed to the project, and also how did this project contribute to the green transition in Spain? First, resuming the words of Cicero, I would like to thank the Commission and thank you all for the invitation. My part here will be more specific. I am here to say that the money does get to the companies. I would like to give you some context. Nordex creates wind generators. This is where our expertise lies, in the wind power. But we started studying green hydrogen as an energy vector in order to profit from certain areas with a great capacity for the renewable energies, solar or wind. And through hydrogen, we could therefore profit from these sources of power. We started analyzing this 3 years ago, and we realized that there was a product that, due to different reasons, we understood could be a good opportunity for having an industrial business related to that green hydrogen, which is the production of electrolyzers in order to facilitate the transformation towards green hydrogen. So we launched a project that had 4 phases, and it will last 4 years. The final goal is that industrial production, massive industrial production in Spain. We have already accomplished 2 phases, and what we have seen throughout this period of implementation is that we are still lacking certain aspects in Europe. For instance, the supply chain. We need to develop such supply chain. There is not a good knowledge of the hydrogen sector, and what we are realizing and what we see in the market at the moment, that if we want to compete with the hydrolyzers coming from China, there's a big price gap. And this is where our project comes in. We have started this project with 3 technological centers, 3 businesses, in order to find technology that allows us to differentiate ourselves from other competitors. The biggest challenge for us is the parks. We do not have a connection to the grid. When there's a lot of wind, we have enough power. When there's less wind, we do not have sufficient power. And this is the challenge that we are trying to solve with this PERTE. This has helped us kick off this project. In the electrolyzers, we're only spending money. We do not have any income. So the party is supporting us in taking the step for launching this research project. And there's another important aspect. We did not know anything about this sector. So this has really allowed us to enter the sector and contact other companies and attract them to join us in this project. We have six companies that are working with us in order to develop something that is more efficient, longer lasting, and that can also fit that renewable profile so that we can produce that green hydrogen, not connected to the grid, but that we can have a wind generator connected to an electrolyzer to produce green hydrogen. So in what way are we supporting transition, you were asking me? Well, in this way, we can produce in these locations with a lot of sun, a lot of wind. We can produce energy at a cost as low, so low that it can be competitive. In 2022, there was a production of 80 million tons of hydrogen. 70% was gray, and the rest was black from coal. So there is a lot of room to replace this. But we just need to produce hydrogen that is competitive. This is the business model that we're aiming for, and to cooperate with other organizations or businesses in the field. I think that we have covered the green component of these RRM without or RRF without forgetting the perspective of the workers. Now we're going to open the floor for the audience to ask any questions. If you can introduce yourselves when you ask the questions. Good morning. Thank you very much, first of all, to the representation of the European Commission in Spain and all the speakers for presenting your viewpoints. I come from the embassy from the Netherlands, and I have two brief questions. First, one aimed at the European Commission, rather. In 2021, when the Spanish plan was passed, there was a lot of expectations. This plan brought about many expectations. It was called to transform the productive model in the country at a digital level, at an industrial level. It would contribute to that challenge of having this strategic autonomy, open economy. And I would like to know what is still left to do. You have mentioned several projects related to energy, renewable energy, mobility. So what is there to do in the 2 years ahead of us in order to contribute to that economic safety? And the second question would be more directed at the Spanish stakeholders. In 2021, when the plan was approved, there was a budget of 70 billion euros, and the minister mentioned that about 33 billion have been used, and we learned recently that Spain would be receiving 100 billion more for the execution in the coming years. But it looks like that execution is finding some difficulties in terms of the red tape at the different government levels. I would like to ask the stakeholders, when they talk about this public-private partnership, what are the lessons learned so far, and what needs to evolve in the next 2 years in order to be able to profit from these 160 billion euros? Well, thank you for your question. I believe I would like to put to the table 3 remarks to answer your question. First of all, what we still need to do, and this is the title of this conference today, it's the implementation for this mechanism of recovery and resilience. We have up until 2026 to implement the funds, to use the funds. And secondly, we have an important idea mentioned by the minister. This public investment needs to be a driver for the private sector. We are talking about very high figures, very high amounts. So this requires that from the public administrations at all levels, local, regional, national, European, we set up a regulatory framework, and now we need to attract the private investment from Europe and from around the globe. What we still need to do in the European Union, in cooperation with the member states, we need to move forward in the development of a net zero industry at a European level. The recent speeches by the President of the European Union, she insists in promoting the competitiveness of the industry and the businesses in the European Union. And this needs to go hand in hand with the net zero ambitions for the industry. The national plan of Spain devotes 1 billion euros in the development of the value chain at a national level. This is a very important step forward towards this development, toward this progress. I know that, Joan, you're working intently on this, but I would like to present some of examples about the potential that Spain has and for the coming years. For instance, when it comes to the wind energy, Spain is one of the few exporters of components for the wind energy. Seville and other provinces in Spain can export, can produce this type of material. Then we have the capacity of producing 30 gigawatts in Spain by 2030. And when it comes to batteries that are key for the ecological transition and the storage of renewable energies and the EVs, in Spain we have a production capacity of 40 gigawatts that can be operational also in 2030. This, of course, requires important investments that of which we have several examples in Sagunto, in Segovia. These are some of the things that we still need to do. We need to keep developing certain specific aspects of the industry, like the ones that I have just mentioned, and also we need to collaborate towards a just transition. We have two specific funds to support this just transitions, and I think that we need to keep working in this field. Joan, would you like to answer the second part of the question?
Yes, I'll answer that. It is a challenge. We've said this at the beginning. The Commissioner and the Minister stated this. It is unprecedented, of course, and this means it's going to be difficult. And this is one of the reflections that we're making. It is associated to headlines, to expectations, to trust. Consultancies had said, recovery and resilience plan. It seems that you're going to be looking at your bank account to see when the millions are going to be there. And we have to take into account that instruments have to be overseen. The public administration has to carry out audits, and the other institutions too. National and European administrations have to do this. We can have peace of mind. This has been done. And we're seeing headlines everywhere on this matter. We've all read the press these days. And we all understand that we have to have this clear oversight with regard to the use of the funds. We could have said, 4, 5, 10 large projects with 400, 500 companies, large companies, and the plan would have been executed. But no, as the minister said, each village, each company, a small village of 100 inhabitants can update the electric system that they have, taking into account the rural setting, the connectivity. And this, of course, entails administrative challenges and other challenges, but it's the right thing. And we have to take into account that this project is generating alliances, employment, and we're seeing the real impact that's being generated. And then, on the other hand, we have frustrated expectations. We have specific examples. In the last call for hydrogen projects, 12 companies are very happy because they have support confirmed, but we have 80-plus companies that have worked very hard, and due to limitations in the budget, well, they won't be receiving these funds. And the grey matter devoted to preparing these projects should be also invested long term. But at the end of the day, we have more people frustrated because they haven't been able to access these funds than those that will receive them. Many lessons learned. I think that during these 3 years we've already improved procedures. This is happening in the different public administrations, ministries, to be able to follow on this pace that, as I said, is historical, but we can do better. And we're not going to have time for more questions. It is already 11. Thank you. Well, as conclusions, we've moved from being number 24 to number 10 with regard to investments. We've also invested many millions with regard to green hydrogen projects. This means that we're working on different strategies to be able to compete with countries such as China. And also, as we have heard, we cannot forget about the social dimension, the social cohesion. We need to also manage these resources in a more agile way, and of course promoting PPPs. And no sector in Spain is not part of this project. We're all rethinking how to become part of this green transition. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to the audience for their participation and contribution. Thank you to those of you who are following us on streaming. And, well, we'll be back after the coffee break at 11:30 to be able to continue with the next roundtable. Thank you very much. You can also take a seat. Thank you.
Pues buenos días a todos.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Thank you to the European Commission for inviting me to moderate this roundtable once again. As you can see, there are many of us. We're trying to have a dynamic session. We have a limited time. My name is Belén Carreño Bravo. I'm a journalist at Reuters. I'm going to briefly present our panelists, high-level experts, to then be able to open up a discussion with them. We'll try to have an open dynamic dialogue with them. And then at the end, we will have a Q&A with the audience so that you can pose your questions. We have Margarita Delgado, the Vice Governor of the Bank of Spain, Israel Arroyo, Secretary of State of Economy, Ms. Celine Goyer, who is the General Director of the Recover Working Group. We have Mateo Valero Cortés, Director of the Supercomputing Center of Barcelona, Álvaro Garner Aranda, I probably did not pronounce this properly, Economic Cabinet of Comisiones Obreras, and then Francisco Vital, Director of Economy at CEPIME, the business association representing SMEs. We've had headlines that can have an impact on the execution of the recovery plan in Spain, and there's a challenge with regard to the implementation rate and the speed rate, taking into account that the aim was to improve the competitiveness and productivity of the Spanish economy is being achieved. We have the right panel to be able to talk about this. We will start with Mrs. Delgado. Could you please summarize the economic impact of the implementation of the recovery plan? The Bank of Spain has recently reviewed the economic forecast to a better position, taking into account that they consider that the plan is doing better than what they expected. The bank has been skeptical somewhat, so maybe you can summarize the impact of the plan on the Spanish economy. Thank you very much for inviting me to this roundtable. Thank you, Belén, for the presentation. I'm going to try to be brief because you asked us to be so. First of all, we should say that our assessment is incomplete. The increase of the growth prospects with regard to the Spanish economy does not contemplate a specific concept with regard to the impact of the Recovery and Resilience Plan. It is true that in a certain way there has to be mentioned because we always provide long-term forecasts based on real economy data. So the assessment is incomplete with regard to the real execution of the plan. We don't have enough data. Data has not been frequently published that would be statistically significant for us to be able to do an assessment. Out of the 37 billion, we know that 26 billion are already within the economy. Secondly, our assessment with regard to the economic impact, the assessment that we're also going to be carrying out, has three objectives, three pillars. The first one has to do with the type of companies. I'm sure we have people here who are going to be talking about the different types of companies because obviously the impact of tenders or subsidies will not be the same depending on the size of the company. Secondly, to be able to understand the economic impact, how to interpret the different relationship between the different stakeholders, and thirdly, the importance of these projects that have been selected so that they are really complementary in nature with the private initiatives. Regarding the size of companies, this is relevant. We have two main focuses, tenders and subsidies, support associated to different figures. On the one hand, tenders are being awarded to larger companies that are more mature, with better access to banking, financing, and then the grants are aimed at smaller companies, and we have to highlight the digital kit that has already reached a high number of SMEs. On the short term, tenders for larger companies can reach the economy quicker, but on the other hand, it is true that as long as we are proactive so that tenders also include SMEs, this could also contribute to a larger growth, alleviating economic limitations. Finally, through models, we have carried out different assessments, and from here until 2033, if projects are carried out adequately, are properly selected, and all the different milestones are achieved, all the different structural reforms are carried out, with regard to the growth of GDP, could reach up to 2 percentage points. Right now, well, we have been carrying out different assessments. We will publish them soon, and this would be what I can say for the moment, taking into account that we still haven't seen an aggregated impact. We will now move on to the Secretary of State. There are certain doubts with regard to the rhythm of implementation regarding the plan, and it seems that there won't be final budgets, possibly in 2024. How can this impact the rhythm of execution of the plan? Is this going to be an obstacle? Will it be an obstacle for the addenda, for instance, because it is closely associated to the budget for this year in Spain? First of all, thank you for the invitation. The answer is no, it won't have an impact, it won't be an obstacle. Well, basically, we'd already contemplated this scenario. Budget extended include enough space, so to speak, to be able to carry out the disbursements that have been forecasted. We have to take into account the law on budgeting for on the one hand, it is a law, it is a regulatory mechanism, and then on the other hand, the ordered income and expenditure of the state, well, nothing is going to put the fund at risk. These funds are secured. Taking into account its regulatory instrument, we will have to look into the possibility of certain elements being part of that law that, well, they just will have to be included in a different vehicle. This will be the only amendment that we might have to do, but it won't entail delays in the execution plan. The plan is being executed at the right pace. The calls, the execution of the plan entail 1.5 billion per month. The first year, the execution was slower, as we can all understand, and then there was a clear growth of the awards. The awards are little, well, we've reached the right pace, and we're also aiming at a specific horizon. We have the 70 billion cap, and we have to take this into account. The minister likes this expression. We're in the middle of the game, mid-time, and this would be our main message right now. Okay, thank you very much, Secretary of State. Céline Goer is the European responsible for the recovery fund, so it is important to ask her about the comparison with Europe of Spain's performance. When the plan was launched, there was a certain legend saying that Spain was the champion of recovery plans. This is still the same way. The objectives set forth by the European Commission, taking into account the size of the program in Spain together with Italy, are expectations being met? And maybe you can also tell us about the debate on the final date to be able to fulfill the plan. And there's a belief that this might be extended. Is this possible?
Thank you very much, Belen. Well, yes, Spain is still faring extremely well in the implementation. It has a very good basis for it, with an extremely good plan, large, that was said already clearly, with the second largest envelope of financing. But more importantly, substantively excellent. I think if you look at all the structural reforms that are included in this plan, this brings the Spanish plan together with the Italian one and a few others, really among the best plans. And the implementation has so far progressed very well. We have seen already difficult but important reforms such as the labour market reform passed and successfully being implemented. So that is extremely positive. Of course, more is ahead. The tax reform is ahead, for example, which will also pose certain challenges, but the work is ongoing and the momentum, as far as we can see, is not going away, which is extremely important. The implementation also going into financing is both good in the design, because the design of those investments is focusing on strategic sectors. So PERTES are really trying to transform the Spanish economy and make it fit for the new digital and climate challenges. So this is good, and we see that the implementation is also progressing. So this is an extremely positive way. We also see progression on things that are important for citizens and small businesses, and that is important also for the buy-in and the support of the overall population for the plan. The digital kit was mentioned for the SMEs, but also all the investments in rail or in energy efficiency are important for people to see what it makes in their day-to-day life. If we see in terms of figures, the implementation is we are looking now at the forced payment request. This brings Spain in the top group of countries. Only Portugal and Italy have already had the forced payment request disbursed, and a few countries also, like Spain, are pending or waiting disbursement once the assessment will be finalized. All of this already leads to a positive impact, as the Commissioner recalled what we could see in terms of immediate recovery, and clearly in a country like Spain, DRF has greatly contributed to that recovery, and that will further fuel the long-term growth, as Margarita just mentioned. But the hard work is ahead. The hardest part of the implementation is coming now, because now it's no longer about launching calls for investment, about distributing vouchers. It's about implementing them really and making sure that they are finalized. Because that brings me to your second question. 2026 is here to stay. There is no extension foreseen or even thinkable, simply because any extension beyond 26 would require unanimity of all the member states, and in many of the member states, ratification by the national parliament. And several of them have already said very clearly, this is not happening. We just don't want it. So we are 2024. The last milestones and targets have to be met by mid-2026. So there is a real urgency that requires the mobilization of all the institutions at national level. So the government, obviously, but also the parliament, who is responsible for passing the important reforms, and of the business community. And that's why this panel and this event is really important, because it's not something that's going to happen just by the public authorities, something that will happen if the private sector picks up the opportunities that are created by the plan. And if this is not picked up, I think the solution is very simple. The money will simply be wasted for Spain, and this huge opportunity wasted. So far, excellent. Going forward, let's be very, very careful. What I can assure here is that we will do our utmost to make it work, because the success of Spain is the success of the EU on this one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pues lo más difícil está por llegar.
Thank you very much. We're now going to talk to Álvaro Garner, a representative from the trade union, Comisiones Obreras. What is the performance of the plan in the workforce? We've talked about upskilling, about adapting the skills of workers to the future in terms of green skills, etc. Are we on the right path? Thank you for the invitation. Regarding this question, it is true that in terms of workers' training within the plan, we've seen different calls from ministries, different organizations in the autonomous communities that are heavily focused on the digital transition with regard to the skills that have to be improved and promoted. Skills that have to do with digital transition, the ones that have to do with the green transition. We've seen many calls, as I was saying. In many cases, the applications that have been awarded are those that are devoted to the green and digital transition. In this regard, we don't have a full assessment of all the calls and all the funds devoted to training. We know that each ministry within its competencies and all the autonomous communities within their competencies are opening up all these calls depending on different priorities. So we cannot have an overall assessment that would allow us to say, yes, we've trained X number of workers, we've improved these types of skills. It is not easy to be able to assess this. And then on the other hand, we are seeing that the existing educational offer within the different educational centers is the one setting the pace. We're going to offer the training in these digital skills more than a pre-existing diagnosis by Spanish companies. Maybe the companies have these needs in terms of workers' profiles. They need to fill in these gaps. And with regard to the tenders, they would be answering those needs. So there might be a mismatch with regard to the demand and the supply for training. And with regard to the different calls, we've seen a certain amount of overlapping because there's no joint plan that would include all the calls. And we can see many administrations that are opening calls to be able to reach digital transition skills. We've seen positive progress, including also the VET law and other advancements. But in this regard, we can see that, well, this is important, this adequation of skills, but we do think that certain improvements could be made so that these funds are really taken profit of to be able to reskill workers. Thank you very much. A couple of notes here. We have comments with regard to these training plans. Workers are the ones that have to make this plan a reality in terms of Spanish competitiveness. Well, we can say that SMEs are core for many governments, for the Spanish government. We mentioned the digital kit, for instance, and I don't know if that from CEPINE, the business association representing SMEs, are you seeing that the plan is bearing fruit? Is it really providing capillarity to SMEs? Francisco, you have the floor. Well, thank you. Thank you for the invitation to be here to contribute my reflections to this gathering. In this regard, it is true that SMEs do have a certain feeling when we ask them, well, disconnected. Is this going to have an impact? Well, 28% of them say no, and then we do have 42% that state that the effect will be low. The second question that we asked them, do you consider that you will be able to access this support? 53% of them say no. And this is why we mention disconnection. SMEs are mentioned, and we do have certain grants that are successful, such as the digital kit, but in other lines, well, SMEs are not so present. There's a heavy focus on the digital kit. Almost 80% of SMEs that are profiting from support are within this field, and we think that there's still room for improvement. Some improvements can be made by different stakeholders, but also to have a comprehensive follow-up in terms of support. We have presence on the internet, web pages, We have process management systems. This is important. And number 6, customer management. We can see that we have different categories, and maybe we should have focused our efforts in other sectors such as Industry 4.0, and we might have to change the digital kit format to other fields. For instance, having a kit for sustainability. Some calls are opened with very short deadlines, and SMEs do not have time to respond. They don't have the resources to do so. And the reality is that we don't really feel fully integrated within the plan. There's still room for improvement in terms of digitization. The Vice Governor has mentioned this in terms of investments, and I'm concerned by this, especially when we compare this with figures from 2019. The investments in capital compared also to the forecasts, and this is what was missing with regard to certain points that are mentioned. We need to include technological progress, and this also entails an increase of productivity. This is a priority for all of us. We have to work towards this objective, and this will help us have more well-being for everyone.
Thank you very much. Mateo Valero is the director of the Supercomputing Center in Barcelona, and he is going to tell us about the real economy. I suppose that for many of us, the supercomputing doesn't make part of the reality. So I think Mr. Valero will connect us with the recovery funds in this reality. What impacts have these funds have in your project? Well, good morning, everyone. It's a real honor to be here with you in this round table. I would like to thank you for the invitation and Belén for your coordination, for your moderation. I would like to say that the Recovery and Resilience Funds for Spain, I come from a small town in Zaragoza, and this has really felt like water in the dry months, that the rainfall in the dry months. And we have to thank the government because they did not have any duty to devote money to research, and they're doing so. So I would like to thank the ministers, and the Secretary of State, and all the civil servants. We're very grateful to them because the connection that we have with them is very fluent, and we are very grateful for that. Our business is supercomputing. We are dealing with the highest and the fastest computer in the world. In Spain, since 2006, we are connected in the Spanish network for supercomputing. There are several provinces having computers that are connected in this network. We serve as the backbone for the country, and I think that everybody needs to contribute to this. These type of computers enable us to dream, to have access to things that for the research that would be impossible otherwise. If we do not have computing, we do not have competitiveness. I am absolutely certain about that. And with AI coming in now, a country without computers that are changing the whole model will be lagging behind. And I have to highlight here that we have always counted on the support from the Spanish government and the Catalan government. And I studied here in Madrid, and since then I've seen the support. And nowadays in Spain, in Mare Nostrum, we have the best European machine in the best center of the whole of Europe. 85% of the salaries of the people working in this team come from the projects that we have with different companies in terms of research. And at the infrastructure level, what we have seen is the renewal of the equipment of the whole supercomputing network. We have received a great amount of those funds in the Barcelona Supercomputing Center and another one from the 14 centers around Spain. We will keep working on the artificial intelligence. Without it, there's no future at every single level. But without artificial intelligence, we cannot solve the problems as how to make the digital twins of the human body or study the climate change. And this is the only tool that we have at the world level to predict what's going to be happening with the climate. When we look at supercomputers, where we are ranking among the best in Europe, without any hesitation, when we look inside of these computers, we realize that none of the processors is European. Europe is lagging behind in that. And we have seen this not only with the cars, that was sort of a silly issue, but the fact is that designing and building the necessary chips, we won't be able to have research, we won't be able to have progress without those chips. And this is the battle that we are seeing between the United States and China. Europe has realized that we have 43 million devoted to the chips, billion devoted to the chips, and we have a Aperta chip in Spain devoted to the production of these chips. We need to create good quality jobs in this field. We need to develop these chips. We are talking about a place, a field in which we see a lot of competitiveness. There are new chairs in the universities, and I fully support this. We need to inject money to our universities so that they can train more engineers. We are bringing here companies that can design chips and produce the chips, and I believe that we can create thousands of positions of jobs in Spain around a topic that is the most important in the world at the moment, the design and the production of chips. The Supercomputing Center is a pioneer in Europe. We are currently dealing with a project for 4 years already, so that Mare Nostrum will have Spanish technology, and we will be the first European supercomputer using technology developed in our country, and this is important, and this is what we're working on at the moment. And I would like to finish with one final reflection. We work with all sorts of companies. We write articles, but our article is that science needs to be excellent, but above all, science needs to be relevant and solve problems in the real world for the real people. If you visit our web, you will see all the projects that we are handling. And I would like to go back on a reflection that someone has mentioned here before. We need to use those funds not only to become stronger and attract money from the companies, but also to become stronger in Europe. The clear example is that of the chips. We need to use those 12 billion euros to bring the greatest amount of funds to our country. How do we do this? By creating centers for the research, businesses that are competitive. This is our motto, to become a Spanish center, but above all, a European center, always contributing to the European policies. And I think this is the way. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much. If you don't compute, you don't compete. I'd like to recall that sentence that you've said. I would like to congratulate my speakers because they're complying strictly with our times. I would like to go for the second round of questions. I think we're doing quite well in terms of time. And I would like to bring about two things that came up in the different dialogues. So please just jump in if you feel you have something to add. We have talked about the equipment, and we have also talked about the transformation of economy, taking it to the next level, AI, chips, etc. I have a basic question here. This rotation, this transformation towards these new tools that are not the traditional equipment materials that we were used to in the past, is economy catching up and keeping up with this transition? And also, I would like to ask you if we are we see an execution that is at the right pace and it's really in line with this shift. Mr. Valero pointed out that we might be lagging behind somewhat. Is the plan preparing us for the future, for this supercomputing, for these chips, for these new next generation technology? I'm going to skip you right now because you just spoke, but you've talked about equipments. Yes, Belen, this is a very interesting question that really needs a work that we haven't carried out from the Bank of Spain. And regarding the investment, however, I would like to point out that the forecast that we have published recently, we see that there has been a reduction in the investment. But it is also true, and we are carrying out a study at the moment that we will publish very soon, that tells us that the companies that have received the most funds from these mechanism have increased their investments compared to the levels before the pandemic. More than would be expected from their sector and their size. This is something that we have not seen in companies that have received funds that are outside this facility. However, at an aggregated level, we do not see an increase in the investment. So we need to, fine-tune a bit what we discuss. So it might. There might be a certain time gap between the recovery of the investment for the equipment with regards to the growth of the GDP. I would like to simply clarify those things. Regarding other topics, I would like to highlight, I said this very briefly before, that we have a great opportunity here, as it's been said by the Secretary of State and Celine, that we see a very great opportunity in the short term with the deployment of these funds, but there are many challenges ahead also. The public administrations need to implement all of the projects. So this is a big challenge, and also about the selection of the projects is a key aspect to all this. And finally, we need to carry out a continuous assessment and in real time in order to identify the things that are turning out well and the things that are not working so well. The final deadline is important, but this shouldn't lead to melancholy and should not prevent us from implementing this correctly. Is there a compensation effect at a time like this, where companies should be really in trouble? Have companies found a sort of a breather in order to solve their access to credit with regards to these funds that present better conditions in the market? I think we should differentiate between different elements. The data that we have prove that companies have recovered throughout the fiscal year of 2022 their margins, and this has enabled them to tackle the higher costs of their inputs. And also we have seen that there has been a shift and a recovery of the real wages of the people, the workers, the families, and this has enabled companies face the potentially higher costs, financial costs. Those companies that had already received funds, as I said in the beginning, especially the smaller companies that have more difficulty in accessing the banking financial loans and credits, this would have enabled them to start projects more easily, or to carry out the projects that they already had in place more easily. But to judge the functioning of the market, we need to look at the recovery of the business margins and the recovery of the wages of the individuals. Do you have any other things to talk about regarding the equipment? Well, I would like to talk about two things. First, the fact that the funds are not reaching the SMEs. This is not what we see in the data. When we see the percentage of execution of the plan with regards to the size of the companies, 43% more or less has gone to the SMEs, but there's obviously a certain bias when we look at our own results and the results of the other companies. There's a great number of SMEs in our country. There's over 1 million SMEs in our country, and most of them will not receive the European funds. But out of the funds that have been executed, a high percentage has gone to the SMEs, and the digital kid only represents a small percentage out of that. But compared to the total number of SMEs, this will reach only a certain amount, of course, maybe a small amount. There's another thing that we are analyzing at the moment, and I would like to differentiate when we talk about investments. We can differentiate between three main categories: building, housing, an investment in infrastructures, and investment in equipment and everything related to the productive equipment. And we are seeing here a very positive effect, and this also relates to the assessments carried out by the Spanish bank. This is translating into the investment of equipment by the businesses. But clearly, the amount of the funds is considerable, but not so much compared to the total of the economy. Do you mean, are you talking about a specific types of equipment or the traditional ones? Well, we haven't gone so granular, but we're talking about machinery and technology, everything that is different from the building elements. The contribution to their productivity is different as well. I would like to say that when we designed the plan, we really sort of saw the future back then, because among the main axes that served us for structuring the plan and the investments, etc., one of the things that we took into account was the environmental transition and also the digital transformation. And after designing the plan, we have encountered the Ukraine war and the importance of being autonomous in terms of the energy sources, to be free from the dependency of fossil fuels. And 1 year and a half, we didn't know what language models were, and now we are hearing about them all the time, these LMMs. And the development of these types of investments, for instance, in the digital kit, I believe that the SMEs need to have access to this type of technology. But also, when it comes to the training of the workers, we have this opportunity with the remaining of the plan to promote the interaction with the AI. And I think that we need to contribute to the productive processes. It's not just to an investment per se for the sake of it, but also to promote the productivity of the SMEs. I don't know if you would like to answer to this from Cepime. It's true what he has mentioned. This has also been pointed out by the Vice Governor, the importance of the selection of the projects so that we can profit fully from this opportunity. But despite this, even if we thought that the 43% of the SMEs that you mentioned, even if these were true, I feel that there would be that the SMEs would be underrepresented when compared to the productive fabric of the country. Also, in Spain, if we do not bet on the SMEs, there's no path towards the digitization possible. when it comes to the digitization of the SMEs and connecting this with some things that Matteo has mentioned, I think that it would be, we need to make some adjustments to give more importance to the AI in this plan. Yesterday, I was asked about some figures about the AI, and I took the data from the National Statistics Institute, and I saw that AI is present in less than 10% of the Spanish businesses. And I think that we need to insist in this regard. And we have an additional problem, not only that we are not present in a key sphere, but also we have a bottleneck in the training of the workers, because when we look at the ITC personnel in the SMEs, we see that this is only 7% of the workers. So we need to insist in the AI, in the training of the talents, and also in parallel, we need to do a lot more in in promoting the research and development. We are very far from the European average. We need to reach the 2.3, 2.4% of investment in the RD&I. This is something that Matteo also mentioned. We have a problem in Europe. We do not have so many big technological champions as the United States and as China and Asia. And we are some steps behind this continent, and we need to strengthen these points, especially investing in RD&I, both in relative terms from the GDP and in absolute terms. In the case of Germany, they invest more than 100 billion euros a year in this, and we're only investing 17.5 billion in this. But I think that we have to strengthen this aspect.
I'm sure that Alvaro wants to take the floor too. Well, I do have a couple of comments with regard to the investment mentioned by the Secretary of State. Regarding the evolution of the investments and job creation, we do need to check certain assessments, but this can be mentioned. If we look at the sectors, well, jobs are being created in those areas that require high profiles, highly specialized. To have the need for a consultant, well, that needs a computer. You don't need a super machine or super equipment to be able to work. And this hypothesis that we are handling right now is that part of this capacity regarding the creation of employment can be related to using existing human capital that wasn't being used up to now, and to include this hypothesis with regard to the assessment of the investment could be interesting. And regarding the speed of execution of the funds, and taking into account what Selina said and the Vice Governor has said, they have both mentioned 2026 as the final date. We have to execute all the plan, and it can transform Spanish economy. And one of the elements that we had identified as a limit to the capacity of execution is that these plans, as Mr. Viñuales was saying, that require more organizational complexity, or, for instance, energy refurbishment or significant effort by stakeholders, are more complicated in terms of results. And also, if we want to take into account the challenge of housing during this term in Spain, we don't have the organizational structure in municipalities or regions to be able to promote public housing. And so part of these funds should reinforce the organizational structures. And with regard to decarbonization, I think it was mentioned before, we were seeing that subsidies, grants are being requested, but loans are having a lower level of adoption that also required reinforcement of the administrative structure to be able to sell these loans with interesting interest rates, as the government was mentioning before. But all these aspects, to be able to accelerate the implementation of the plan, we should probably also invest in organizational structures. And this is something that has not been done, I think, and it might be the final effort that is needed to be able to, accelerate the execution. Supercomputing representative, well, thank you. I think it is clear to everyone that society is changing very fast. We have data, computing, and artificial intelligence as key elements in SMEs, in research. Nobody's saying that the biggest contribution of AI to me is that with a sequence of amino acids, you can have the 3D structure of a protein. This entails work. When Google published this, we had 50,000 researchers using these ideas to be able to improve societies. These three components, key components that I've mentioned, what's the basis of all of this? Chips. Without chips, we don't have computing. We don't have supercomputing. We don't have artificial intelligence. Supercomputing and data means artificial intelligence. Without artificial intelligence, this is not like in the movie, but what about Europe? Well, chips, we have the smaller ones, the very small ones. We have the size of the transistor and the number of transistors. We have the smallest one. With regard to the automotive industry, well, there was a problem with regard to the design and the production. The supply chains were used for other components, but the vehicle chips are now more complex. Now it is about high-speed chips with 3 nanometers chips that we use 100,000 chips that commute at 3 billion times per second, and we've got hundreds of these chips. Who does that? That's the challenge. That's the war with Samsung, TSMC, Huawei, US, China. The founder of OpenAI is searching for between 3 and 7 billion euros to try to dominate the artificial intelligence market in terms of software and hardware, to be able to design, customize the best chips, because there are many, many opportunities for all sized companies, because chips are going to be specific for our applications, for foundries, and also for energy, as mentioned before. What should we do in Europe? What has been done? Well, in terms of hydrogen or wind power, we are leaders. We have to foster those fields in which, if we strive, we can be the best and we can sell to the rest of the world. And these are where chips are. There's a new way of doing chips with refry. And we have Minister Escrivá, we've got the Secretary of State. They're all there. They're supporting the ecosystem so that Spain can be among the leaders with regard to designing the chips of the future. To end, with no computing, there's no competition. With no universities, we don't have chips. Without education, we have nothing. And anything that we can do from our budgets, we have to respond to many social matters, of course, but anything that is related to education will be the gold of the future. And with regard to chips, I think, well, the Barcelona Supercomputing Center, we have coordinated 37 universities with 4 research centers so that they really train, educate more than 1,000 people, engineers per year. We're associated to the Semiconductors Association. We're creating this large structure that will help educate people. Without education, we have no future. Without universities, we have no chips. This would be another headline. Thank you very much. Well, we're doing great. We have 5 more minutes. It is an additional bonus to our panelists. I was going to give the floor to Ms. Gower.
This new part of the recovery plan, in case you can add something about the implementation. Otherwise, I will ask Mr. Arroyo about that. But please go ahead, Celine.
Thanks a lot. No, I wanted to come back, picking up also on lots of what said, to answer your question on, is the plan actually helping us or suitable to help us managing this transition? And there was a lot of debate on how to share the pot of money, that big company, small company. I think that, for me, is not so much the question. The plan does invest in the right parts, in the right sectors. So PERTE Chips is addressing directly the topic we were discussing, and it is obviously important to help companies to digitalize whatever their size. But I think in the longer term, there are other types of elements that are even more important for the long-term competitiveness of the country and of Europe. And the first one is the enabling reforms. The first one is, how do we make Spain and Europe more generally an attractive place to invest? Because this pot of money, how big it may be, is not sufficient to finance the transition, neither the digital nor the green transition. So we need to ensure that the private investment is taking place, and is taking place in a good context. That's why all what goes into improving the administration, and we have a number of reforms on public administration here in this country, but also in Italy, in Croatia, in Romania, in a number of other member states, is absolutely essential. Everything that will reduce time needed for permitting and business operation is absolutely critical. We discussed yesterday in meetings with stakeholders a lot about red tape. So everyone talks about the red tape here in Spain. Fine, but the plan is providing a very good basis for identifying very specifically what is it, this red tape? What are these inefficiencies and bottlenecks that hinder the digital transformation, as the many transformations that have to be taking place? The second element is skills. I think a lot was said, so I will not repeat it, but the investment of the plan in skills, although it doesn't look directly relevant for sharing the pot of money that you were discussing, is actually more important. Because one of the biggest challenges that all companies are facing at the moment, in particular in the digital field, is about skills. So reform of the vocational training and investment in skills is absolutely essential. The third one is access to finance, and that probably bridges to your other question on the agenda. Access to finance is going to be greatly facilitated by all the more than 80 billion in financial instruments that have just been added to the Spanish plan through the agenda, and this is what could help companies precisely investing in that transformation, because again, the main investment has to come from them, and the multiplication effect is much bigger if you rely on their investments. And fourthly, to also come back to what the Commissioner was saying earlier on the fragmentation, it could have been the great fragmentation following the pandemic, the fact that all of your neighbors do have the same direction, because the 26% of investment in digital in the Spanish plan is actually the EU average. So you will see that all the other member states go exactly in the same direction. And the fact that they are going in the same direction, cooperating either explicitly and directly through the plan or simply more normally through the business operation with the Spanish companies is also absolutely essential for the future. So I think, yes, the plan is contributing to that transition, but not only by sharing this huge public support to the investments, but much more by all the enabling elements that are featuring in the plan. Thank you.
Muy bien. Thank you very much. Pues antes de pasar a la audiencia, sí me gustaría una pincelada.
Before moving on to the audience, I did want to mention something more on the addenda. Maybe the Secretary of State wants to answer. I don't know if the audience knows what this is, the addenda. We're talking about the additional 80 billion euro that are going to be implemented, apart from the previous 60 billion, in loans with specificities. How is this going? How is this going to happen without a general budget for the country? I'm a bit skeptical with your previous answer. Well, there won't be an impact, as I said, because basically the budget already contemplated these transfers. There's a part of the budget that will be extended, and in technical terms, there will have to be a transfer from Chapter 4 to Chapter 8 of the budget, and we have room for this. I just want to assure you in this respect. As for the content of the addenda, we have these 80 billion euro in the form of loans. A significant part will be transferred via Ecofide, certain entities that exist in Spain as vehicles of these instruments. Then there will be another part transferred via funds that will be created to be able to manage these loans. In particular, there's one that will be quite significant, the Regional Resilience Fund. It is quite particular. It will be a shared governance between the state and the autonomous communities. This was something that was demanded by autonomous communities, not only to play a role in the execution, but also in the selection of projects, and they will do so through this fund. And it is also important to mention another aspect that was mentioned, among others, by Céline. Beyond public investment of the plan, a way of restarting things after the pandemic, reorienting the priorities of the country towards specific objectives, well-thought objectives. I think that reforms will be the key part of the plan. They will enable a more productive and resilient economy, and also the participation of private companies, private funds. It is about companies taking the lead. They have to see that there's a clear opportunity and take the lead. And the addenda is the perfect example for this. We're talking about loans. This is a business opportunity. The economy is growing, productivity is growing, and we have a more open economy, taking into account the implementation of the plan that has been carried out up to now with non-tourist services, services that are not related to tourism, but related to consultancy and other services, engineering companies. And in the future, this is a clear opportunity for investment, and the addenda will probably show us if companies are using this opportunity. So it is important to highlight the private initiatives. I think we might have a question among the audience. If you want to raise your hand, well, look at this. No questions. We've solved all the questions and found all the solutions. Well, on my behalf, that's all. I would just like to mention a few headlines. We have talked about specific topics, the addenda related to the opportunity, the sustainability kit that was also mentioned, also the need of accompanying the upskilling of workers and also the Barcelona supercomputing center desire to turn the country into a superpower in this regard. Many training cycles in VT can now fulfill the development of skills for future employees. Ms. Goer talked about the deadline being here to stay, permanent. We have different formulas also associated, for instance, with the addenda, with the Secretary of State. Well, we can be calm, no budget, but everything is forecasted, and also to take into account that this plan is adopted to the economy and to the improval of competitiveness. Thank you very much to the panelists. Thank you for being strict in terms of the time, going straight to the point and talking about the efficiency of the plan. And now we will have the next roundtable. Thank you very much.
Los fondos estructurales y de cohesión europeos llevamos trabajando en España desde la mismísima adhesión a la Unión Europea.
Hemos invertido más de 150.000 millones en España y ahí seguimos, al pie del cañón.
Todos del atril me han dejado aquí. Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to start by thanking the European Commission for organizing such an interesting and important and relevant event, and obviously our speakers for accepting the invitation to join us in this panel. I'm sure that we will be learning a lot from them. Before we start this conversation with our speakers, I would like to also thank the European Commission for promoting the Recovery and Resilience Facility that has represented an important change in the paradigm, in the way we do things within the European Union. About a decade ago, we were in the midst of a sovereign debt crisis that was solved with the creation of intergovernmental institutions. So there was no solution from the institutions of the European Union. There were certain financial assistance programs, and Spain was the beneficiary of such programs, and they offered credits subject to very strict requirements, and that required a memorandum of understanding. But the response given to the pandemic and the economic challenges that followed were completely different. We have a response from the institutional bodies of the European Union, where half of the millions that are being transferred are transferred, not loans. And also we are talking about instances that are not from outside the member states that decide, but the member states themselves who make the decisions, obviously in cooperation with the European Commission, and which afterwards are validated by the European Commission. According to a report published recently, this has represented several benefits. We are seeing a better compliance with the recommendations for the countries. Also, the recovery plans have proven to be very flexible. They have been adapted to respond to, for instance, the energy crisis that came about after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And they will also have an important macroeconomic impact, according to the estimates of the European Commission. In 2026, the GDP will be 1.4% higher than it would have been without this facility. In the case of Spain, the figure is twice this figure, around 3.5%. This is important because Spain will be the main beneficiary of this transfer that amount to 77.2 billion euro, even more than Italy. This entails a particular responsibility on the side of Spain to make this plan a total success. Obviously, there are many challenges ahead, which we will discuss on with our speakers. For instance, we will have to discuss different European funds within different frameworks. On the one hand, we have the Next Gen EU funds based on the milestones and goals that are to be appropriated by the countries. And we have here to discuss all these topics an exceptional set of panelists. We have the representation from the European Commission, represented with Maite Fabregas. We also have Mercedes Caballero representing the national government administration. Also, we have Luis Alberto Marin, who is the Councillor of Economy, Treasury and Businesses of Murcia. We have also a mayor from the city of Mataró, Mr. David Bote. Also, the official credit institute, the ICO. We have the president of this institution here, José Carlos García de Quevedo. And clearly, it's also important to know the opinion of the beneficiaries of the different sectors. And for that, we have Carolina Fernandez. She is the deputy director of the foundation of the Romani Secretariat, and Mr. Íñigo García, the Director General of SAPA, who's going to tell us about the connected EVs. Without further ado, we're going to give the floor to Ms. Mercedes Caballero. She has been working on this from the very beginning. She is the Secretary General of the European Funds from the Ministry of the Treasury, and you are very well positioned to give us a broad vision of this plan in Spain. I'm sure that you have a lot of data to share with us, and I would like you to tell us about the challenge of handling this jointly with the European Union, with the two systems that we're using, one of them based in the milestones and goals and the traditional funds. And also, I would like to know how this all translates into the Spanish case, because we have been focusing in the reforms. Do you think that reforms will be able to channel the investments? Well, thank you very much, Judith. Thanks to the Commission also for inviting me to this panel. What is my opinion on the Recovery and Resilience Plan? Well, I can say that we are making progress. We have already received 38 billion euros. We have requested the fourth envelope of funds that is being assessed by the Commission at the moment, and we have already complied with 121 milestones and goals. So we are front runners in the execution of this plan. What is our opinion on this? Well, I believe that this plan responds to all the logics around this. First of all, because the transformation of the productive tissue through reforms need to translate into the better use of the investments. And I can tell you about the support to entrepreneurs, cybersecurity, 5G, telecommunications, audiovisual, science, education, climate change. All these are topics that are covered by the reforms. First came the reforms, and now we will see the certification of the investments. This doesn't mean that there were no investments from the beginning. What happened is that investments need a longer maturing period, if you will, and we need to decide what needs to be done. But many projects, in particular, the biggest investment projects regarding the environment, water, energy, infrastructures, require long development processes. So it makes sense that certification is connected with the disbursements that we will see in the second part of this project, of this plan. But aside the plan, we have the agenda. So beyond the 4 pillars that we have and the 10 lever policies, we have 253 measures, out of which 142 are investments, and we have over 500 milestones and objectives. How can we combine all this? Regarding the different levels of the administration that is a characteristic of our country, well, we need a lot of granularity here. We need to take into account that out of the 60 billion that are being executed at the moment, over 29 have already been transferred and are being executed by the regional governments. This is organized through the 22 ministries, depending on the different competencies that are allocated to the regional government and the national government. So this is through the 22 ministries, the 17 regional governments, the 50 provinces, the municipalities. There are over 4,000 municipalities participating in the Recovery and Resilience Plan. The success of this plan is connected to the granularity, and for us to be able to, through this granularity, being able to touch on all the different levels of the administration and all the levels of the communities within the country. And obviously it is unavoidable to count on the investment from the private sector that will come and complement the public administration investments. Probably the ECO president will be able to explain this further. There is this whole part related to the credits that will be allocated. I will also like to talk about the existence of the cohesion policy and the funds that go hand in hand. There are certain spheres for action where both things can interact, and there are many synergies between the two. What we call the development and innovation aspect, and we also have the connectivity part. So there is a certain interconnection between all these, whether it has to do with the renewable energies, the infrastructure, the SMEs, etc. Another data that I would like to leave you with is that over 22,500 users are uploading information to the system in the fourth envelope, and 18,000 nodes that are points of connection between the different public administrations that collaborate so that the resources can be connected to a goal. That this means there is a plan, big challenge in terms of coordination of management, but it's not a challenge in my view. It's an opportunity for us all that we need to profit from, and I think that we are creating a co-governing culture and a sense of culture of union, of being together for the development of the plan. So my outlook on this is very positive. So I will keep the idea that this is an opportunity and that we are promoting a culture of co-governance. I would like to leave the floor to Luis Alberto Marin. He is the Councillor of Economy, Treasury and Business for the Autonomous Region of Murcia. I think that for the for the regional governments, this is a great opportunity that you have to challenge all these channel all these funds. And as we said, there is this traditional policy that needs to be combined with the recovery and resilience plan. So what is your assessment of the first 3 years of implementing this facility? What is your perception looking forward? When we talk also about the milestones and the objectives and the other system, which of those two do you think is more useful? Maybe you can tell us if this is an efficient way of working. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me to this important event, for giving me the opportunity of sharing with you our viewpoint from the region of Murcia. I would like to say that regarding the challenges, the opportunities, and also the issues that the regional governments have found when it came to the reception and the execution of all these funds. I would like to acknowledge, first of all, the immense effort done by the public administration to implementing a plan that is a complete novelty. I will go back to this again later on, but I think it is fair to note this major effort, and I think this is something that we all need to do, regardless of our ideologies or of our political loyalties. These funds were received by the government, by the regional governments, with a lot of hope, with a lot of expectation. We were very hopeful because they represented an great opportunity to recover from a difficult situation due to the pandemic, but not only for that, but also to transform ourselves and to develop certain socio-economic aspects, in this case related to the region of Murcia. But I have to say that this initial hope and expectation turned into a certain shock and surprise, because there was a very scarce participation in the the small contribution that was required from us in the designing of this plan. I want to be very constructive with this critique. I think that all the regional governments thought that we would participate further in the development of the plan, and most of us started developing regional plans that we sent to the Ministry of Economy. And in the case of our region, we contacted over 300 businesses to develop these business models that were aimed at transforming us structurally speaking. But as the plan was being developed, we started seeing different documents, and we realized the role that we were given that was not very representative or very significant. And as we saw the results of the different sectorial conferences, when we learned about the legal instruments that were organizing the different allocation of the funds, I have to say that we would have liked to be requested to participate further, and I'm trying to be very constructive here. But that said, I would still like to thank the administration, the central administration, and the local administration, and the regional administration, and obviously the European Commission for their intense efforts to materialize this plan and for it to be fully successful. Now, what have we learned from this? What are the lessons learned, and what can we improve? Regarding the things that can be improved, I think we need to work in improving and enhancing the core governance. I will give you a small example, a very light example. It's when you talk about energy efficiency, you know that we have a lot of sun. And when we talk about energy efficiency, we would say that we need to adapt these mechanisms to the different regions, the different territories within the country, because we have much more sun than the north of Spain. This is obvious. So in my view, we need a better co-governance, better participation in the decision making. I also would like to have more processes that are more uniform to try to cover certain gaps that exist. And also, I think we need to reinforce the technical gaps as well, in terms of the training, in terms of also the functioning of the coffee that has given us quite a few headaches. We are very aware of the efforts that are being made, but I believe that it is the right time to point out the small flaws that we have seen and to tackle those in the second phase when we are adding the repower and the new addenda. This is the right time to polish these little things, and I think that the work that has been done has been very productive, very intense, but obviously everything that is done by the humans is not perfect, and I think that we have margin for improvement. Okay, I will keep the idea of that we need to keep working towards perfection. This is something that is very new, that had to be executed in very extraordinary circumstances, and we really welcome the positive critiques. Criticism, because we expect to have new plans after this, and it's very useful to have these criticism that will allow us to improve further. I will move on to the third level, to the local entities. There are over 4,000 municipalities participating in the plan, and here we have David Bote. He is the mayor of Mataró. You're, if I understood well, you're have a doctorate in physics, and you are a true believer in the power of the municipalities. So how do you perceive this recovery and resilience plan? I suppose that this must be a great challenge to execute this. Also, you're the closer to the ground, so I suppose that many companies contact you to request aids. And if I understood well, the project that has the greater amount of funds is funded precisely with the this facility. So I would like to hear how you're helping the companies and what are the projects that are being funded by the plan. Well, good morning, everyone. Victor mentioned Cicero before, but I would like to thank everyone, and in particular, I would like to thank the European Commission. I asked a predecessor what was the first project that was funded by the European Commission in our municipality, and it was a water treatment plant that is still in use. So the history of the European Commission is connected to the transformation and the development of my city. I would like to highlight certain things that have been accomplished and certain things that can be improved. I think that the coming out of the crisis has a clear roadmap. If we compare this with the situation after the real estate bubble, we had a very clear path to move out of that. We didn't have a very clear path out of that, sorry. And however, now we do have this clarity. We know what are the vectors in which we need to insist. one of my managers had COVID, and I asked him to develop a full plan to open the parks, the schools, the different public centers. And this is exactly what I think we need to do now. I think that we need to have the right combination of people working from their own positions with a single goal in mind. I think this is the best learning that I have from the implementation of this plan. This philosophy has helped us respond to the needs of the Mataró citizens, but also we have had the opportunity for funding projects amounting to 20 million euro. Also, we need not to forget the administration itself. We need to transform ourselves in the physical aspects, and the certain funds helped contributed to the sustainability of many of the systems that we used, but also we need to renew ourselves by setting certain goals connected to specific projects and to transform the way that we work, the culture of the way we work. This has left a certain mark in us. And thirdly, it's been mentioned before, we want to align the goals not only of the different administrations, but because it's the European Union, the state, the regional governments, and the municipalities, they need to have a plan having the same pillars, but also we need to have the private sector joining in. One of the projects that is going to be carried in Mataró
has been requested by a company. The town considers that this is key for the future, and it is a circular economy project. So we're seeing that the model of city, the management model, the strategic lines are also taken on by some companies and are bringing forward some projects that are in line with the strategy and the future that we want for Mataró in 10 years or 20 years' time. We're not as big as a state or a region, but yesterday I was opening an occupational fair, and to see that the 3 lines of the town council are aligned with important aspects, occupation for jobs for young people. Well, this is great because it means that we're fully aligned with the needs of society. Improvement. Well, life is about what you do, what other people do, and what happens. And what happens is sometimes overwhelming. In some projects, well, we were awarded as one of the best projects with regard to urban planning, and we managed to avoid certain obstacles. This is well, interesting, but deadlines are fixed. They have to be taken into account in terms of performance. We have executed some of the funds very well, but we have to keep a close eye on deadlines. Locally, those of us who are closer to citizens, it is difficult sometimes to see how this fits in. The transformation of care economy, the productive fabric, this sometimes might seem far from the local sphere. And my recent concern has to do with the 2 drivers, development and income, converge, and how to incorporate those in the most vulnerable groups of population in terms of public housing. So we're talking about the regeneration of the housing offer. This is very complex. It is a very important topic for the future. It is close to my heart, and I think that we have clear room for improvement. I don't know how much time I have, but to finalize, we have to avoid the administration from crystallizing. we're always thinking about those that don't abide, and we have to be very tough with those that don't abide. But at the same time, we need to reward those that do things properly. And it seems that the administration is crystallizing. Sometimes it is difficult to do things properly. And this is something that I mention in different forums. In the future, the services have to continue. Did I abide by the law? Yes. Did I do this? Yes. But maybe things are more difficult with regard to the future. And with regard to managing funds, I think we have lessons to learn, not only in terms of accountability, but also in terms of how to be more agile. Well, I will keep this key message, agility, and not losing sight of the administration's objective to channel these funds and to take this opportunity and take into account also the prevention of fraud. Agility, fraud prevention. Well, the Official Credit Institute has always played an important role. In one of my previous lives, I remember that Mr. Quevedo was managing the COVID funds, and this is an evidence that good work is rewarded with even more work. And in fact, ICO is playing an important role with regard to the addenda of the recovery plan within this framework that was recently approved by the Council of Ministers to mobilize up to 40 billion in loans. And I wanted to ask you about the public-private partnerships. The ICO program was a success thanks to the alliance between the public sector and the private sector, how to channel these guarantees. And I think that you're going to be following a similar instrument through the funding lines. Well, thank you very much. Thank you to the European Commission. We work hand in hand with the Commission and other stakeholders, and within ICO, we know that we're always working with the adaptation and anticipation that has been required from us to solve some crisis situations such as the pandemic, and in a satisfactory manner, thinking about the economic fabric. But at the same time, we launched many other initiatives and activities, among others, to align our strategy with the pluriannual strategy of the European Union. Within the post-pandemic framework, it was clear that private-public partnerships were essential. The financial intermediates were part of the solution, reaching all the sectors and companies, but also through different organizations, business organizations, and different levels, regional, territorial, local, binding also the European Union with the central administration. And this is what we're going to be using with regard to the second phase of the Recovery and Resilience Plan. We align our strategy in the long term until 2027 with the pluriannual framework, and then we had the next generation funds, but we were already part of the certification process as implementing partner, managing different programs, the Euro facility, among others. Alternative energy infrastructures, etc., aligning the two pillars of our strategy, business growth, sustainability, with 40% of the new funds devoted to sustainable objectives, green and social sustainability, digitization, because this has been mentioned before by the European Funds Secretary, not only do we need to take into account the quantitative aspects, but also the qualitative aspect of the reform that is fed into the impact in terms of productivity of the funds and also the qualitative impact of the transformation of the business fabric towards a more sustainable growth model in the domestic market and the international market. This is very important. During this second phase, ECO will be managing 40 billion euros in 5 facilities. The first one contributes to green transformation with 22 billion. Then we have entrepreneurs and companies with 18 billion, Mistec for digital transformation, audiovisual hub, and affordable social housing. I was in Murcia recently in different meetings to be able to make this process more agile, public housing more affordable, with another significant part of the funds. And also in Mataró, through the Generalitat, we are seeing that the circuits are functioning properly. We will use 4 instruments. One of the funding line with the different intermediaries, the direct financing of the project up to 70% with the issuance of bonds and with investments in equity and in capital with hedge fund managers. This is important with regard to the public-private partnerships. These 40 billion euros, between 70 and 75% will be handled through financial intermediaries, two-thirds through banks and the rest via the hedge fund managers. We have certain conditions that have to be set, and they have been brought forward by the European Commission. We've got the director of DG Recover here. We've used our experience in the Invest UE program, and that is between 10 and 20 billion. If under 10 billion euros, the process will be simplified to be able to abide by these criteria. Declaration of responsibility requested by intermediaries, and then another line that has to do with the final investments for these investments. It has to be feasible in economic terms, and there has to be compatible with transfers, and the other part has to be financed. Also, we will have to do so via loans. We will have state aids also added to this, and we also will take into account the economic interest of the European Union in terms of the conflict of interest, fraud, and the reporting system will be according to the technological platform linked to coffee. This has been set forth together with other tools made possible by new technologies. Thank you very much. Out of the 40 billion euros that you will be managing, between 70 and 75% will do through financial intermediaries, and 1/3 of this quantity will have to do with hedge fund managers. It is good to have banks, but it is also good to have other financial intermediaries. So will be fulfilling several objectives with this. We will now move on to Carolina Fernandez. As I said, she's the Deputy Director of Defense of Rights of the Secretaría Gitano Foundation. You have been managing funds from the recovery plan. You've been doing so for quite some time. It would be great to hear your vision. What does the recovery plan entail for you, for foundations such as yours belonging to the third sector? And with regard to reforms? What is the expected impact? Well, good morning. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for including the vision of a third sector organization. The foundation is a social entity. We've been working for more than 40 years in defense of the equality of rights of Roma people. We do this in different spheres, one of them being education. We work in 70 locations and we have approximately 1,200 staff. We are who we are in great part thanks to this social European Fund. We started managing funds in 2000. We will continue doing so until 2029. So we have long experience in the management of European funds. We have managed 3 initiatives within the recovery plan, and I'm going to take the opportunity to show the value of the plan for our organization, and especially for those people who are in a vulnerable situation. First of all, I would like to highlight the Tandem project. It is associated to the public employment entity. It is employment opportunities for young people who are out of a job. The aim is that through the recovery plan, we are funding programs going beyond the standard response. We can adapt these programs to the profile of people in vulnerable situations. In our case, it is working very well with Roma young people, profiles with low training, low level of employability, and this is generating opportunities for the labor integration of people with low employability. This is also important, taking into account it is part of public policies. It is in association with the Public Employment Institution. This only has a clear obstacle, which has to do with continuity. We have to take into account the framework of public policies and the responsibilities in the hands of regions. Secondly, we are managing a project that is associated to minimum income. The call was organized in collaboration with the Social Inclusion Ministry for the development of social itineraries for those families that are receiving the minimum income. This has allowed us to launch a pilot program focused on the activation measures that are associated to minimum income. We have focused on an education program. We are working with children from these families that receive the minimum income to be able to guarantee their educational success. Education to avoid the chronic nature of certain situations, to break the poverty circle. Once again, we hope that these experiences will included in public policies. And as we were saying before, this is part of the structural reforms that are being carried out to contribute to the fact that the minimum income that is key to be able to fight poverty improves its efficiency. And thirdly, a call related to digitization. It is in collaboration with the Ministry of Social Matters for the modernization and digitization of organizations. The value in this case is that it has allowed the organization to acquire digital skills to be able to carry out this digital transformation, but it also entails an investment that allows us to give better possibilities to those in vulnerable situations. We've been able to open digital classrooms in all our headquarters, open to providing digital training to the people that we support. 3 projects with regard to the recovery plan. Going back to the European Social Fund and the Recovery Fund, this has been a key instrument for transformation, for generating impact. It is a structural instrument that allows us to plan with people with regard to medium-term plans, giving scalable response. In the case of the recovery plan, we've been able to launch experimental pilot programs that should be included within public policies. The recovery plan is more about short-term projects, and they require, we think, continuity. The recovery plan for third sector organizations solves a challenge that we have. The European Social Fund requires co-financing, and we also have the certification challenge. We have to anticipate the payment, and for social entities, this is associated to a clear risk of sustainability. Allow me to finish with 2 ideas. On the one hand, the social impact of the recovery plan has to go beyond components 22 and 23. We have to be able to focus on those in the most vulnerable circumstances. We have to see this in other components, in the green component, and in anything that has to do with housing, infrastructures, etc. And allow me to finish by highlighting the role played by third sector organizations in the implementation of the recovery plan. We are a key stakeholder. We are making sure that these investments are allocated to the right people to be able to close gaps. We're doing so with regard to the implementation of the recovery plan, and we would have liked to play a larger role in the previous phase of the design of initiatives and programs. I would like to stay with that idea, the important role that you're playing, not only with regard to the double transition, but we're also talking about social policies, social fighting poverty, and also along the line of constructive criticisms that you would like this to go beyond components 22, 23, including social elements with housing, etc. We will now move on to Íñigo García, General Director of SAPA. You are one of the beneficiaries of the first PERTE plan, I think, the connected electric vehicle. It generated strong expectations, and if I understood properly, you have also been part of the request of public support from the US, taking into account that there's a certain debate on this, saying that public support is better channeled in the US with tax incentives. I would like you to explain how Bertevec has worked for you. How do you compare this with the possibility of accessing public policies in Europe compared to the US?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation and extend my and take this opportunity to explain what this has represented for us, what the PERTE has meant for us. I would also like to thank the Ministry of Industry for their trust in us and also for the effort. It was not something easy to do. Some people have already mentioned this before, to handle efficiently this amount of funds and to compare this with our experience with the United States. We have this impression. We were very brave with this when we requested the PERTE, the first PERTE. This was in line with our strategy of diversifying our business, of going global, but it took some courage to do. To answer your question, I would like to say that the PERTE-BEC went well. Somebody mentioned this before. You need to have references, and we think that it's been successful. It's true that it's been improved, but I believe that with the volume, with the amount, and with the management that we saw for this PERTE, I have to say that as a first round, this was very good. Then the PERTE 2 was improved, but this was good. It went smoothly. But I would also like to highlight that it was intended to have a good result. This is something that is important. It's true that this is the management capacity related to the timing of the arrival of the funds. This was something that many people asked about, but I think that we were aiming for good results, and we have achieved good results. When we compare this with the United States, there is a clear difference. We submitted our request in May 22. In September 22, we were already starting, and in January we had the funding in 23. We are in the hybrid PERTE, and we had the call in August. And in January, we were starting the project with the funding. So if we talk about the volumes that we are discussing here, I can say that there is speed, there is efficiency, but I would like to go back again to what the mayor said before, the results. This PERTE was aimed at having these good results, and the results are good. I would like to take the opportunity for asking that these results should be rewarded. How? By supporting this with investment, but also I think it's important to support these funds with protection and with the trust in the SMEs and the research and development to generate the product, to generate the market, so that we have a real ambitious view as a country, and that we reward the results, and that we can have, at the end of the process, a real return of these investment. Wonderful. Thank you very much. This is very much in line of what the mayor said before, but I would keep this idea that the first call for PERTE-BEC, this was a success for many businesses, because it looked like since a second call had to be organized, the first one had been a failure. But obviously, this spirit of continuously improving, of testing things. And I would like to leave the floor to Ms. Maria Teresa Fabregas. She is the director of the working group Recover. You have the view of all the recovery plans within the European Union. So I would like to hear your experience. What is your assessment of these first 3 years of the plan? Do you really believe that the reforms that are being implemented in Spain are promoting better compliance of the specific recommendations for each country? And other questions that I have for you that are trickier, if you wish, for the next multi-annual financial plan, there is this idea of replacing completely the expenditure certification mechanisms in order to move on to a milestones and objective mechanism to facilitate things for the businesses and the individuals. And secondly, do you think that there could be a next-gen EU 2.0? Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to all our panelists for staying here with us and sharing their thoughts throughout this event. their words will help me outline the perception of these mechanisms around Europe. As you said at the beginning of this panel, the Recovery and Resilience Facility and the Next Gen EU initiative have represented a good example of solidarity at a very difficult time. 700 billion euros were put on the table in order to boost the economy and also to promote the modernization following the priorities of the European Union. So we are talking about recovery and resilience, and also in the sphere of the digital world, green, social, and energy. All these fields were included in this plan. And this is being perceived as a great accomplishment. Up until now, we have disbursed 225 billion euro at a European level. 75% of the milestones and objectives that should have been finished by 2023 have been actually finished. So we are up to speed, at a cruise speed, with the rest of Europe. The European Commission published a partial assessment of the facility, and up until now, we're not analyzing all the impacts at a micro or microeconomic levels. We do not have enough data for this. We will do this in 2028, an ex post analysis. But for now, we can talk about the successes or the achievements of this plan. And I will mention also later on some learnings. But let's talk about let's talk about the achievements. The announcement of this initiative actually helped calming down the financial markets. And those of you who work in this area, Jose Carlos, are very aware of the significance of these step of calming down the markets, and also to prevent certain frictions between the state members, that this is a true European project. Secondly, it is a project that is not only a quick stimulus for the recovery, but it also supports transformation. It helps sustain public investment levels because, as the Commissioner said before, financial crisis the last financial crisis did not allow for the public investment to be maintained. In this case, we have not only maintained these investments, but we have also increased the number of jobs around the European Union. Regarding the design of the plans, this has contributed enormously to the cohesion and the convergence around Europe towards the same priorities. We, all the member states, have designed their own plans in order to work towards the same objectives that are being set at a European level. And with this support, we are getting there. Fourth, regarding the reforms and the investments, each of the member states has introduced in their specific plans certain structural reforms that were necessary, that were being requested from those member states for many years before, and they have also included transformative investments in specific areas that will make resilience of all member states a reality. In fifth place, there was this conditioning the payments with the results and not the certification of the expenditures. So when we see the first results of an investment or a reform, we can keep on giving the funds that allow us to make better forecasts for each of the member states. Each of the member states can demonstrate that they're already working on certain things. And the last element is the country plans. This gives each of the countries a lot of responsibility and accountability because You are the ones who are in charge of implementing the plan and making this a success. But it's not only up to you. And this takes us to the learnings that we saw and that were included in the report published recently. An important topic that has been mentioned in all the panels before this one is the involvement of the private sector, involvement of the social stakeholders, and the participation of the third sector and all the levels of the administration, so that from the very design and later on in the implementation, we can be sure that that all the instruments that are being used and developed are the right ones for the country needs. This is something in which all member states are currently working, so that all these reforms and investments can be implemented by the end of 2026. Something that has also been discussed recently is the writing of the contract between the member states and the European Commission. They say it's very strict, it requires a lot of certifications, justifications, and we're working from the European Commission so that we try to simplify some of the processes. But obviously, the level of ambition of all the investments needs to be kept very high. Regarding the clerical capacities, the mayor of Mataró mentioned that at the local administration level, there were certain actions that were carried out in order to train the people that were going to handle the plans. And Mercedes can explain this better. How to transform an administration that were focusing in certifying the expenditure towards being concerned more about the results of the investments. This entails a change in the mindset, protecting always the financial interest of the European Union. Of course, Spain, as it has been said by many speakers before me, also the minister and the commissioner, Spain is handling the plan very well. They're at cruise speed, and we are seeing already the impact of many of the initiatives undertaken. But we need to keep on working, specifically taking into account that, as Celine has been very clear about and has pointed out very clearly, there is no possibility of changing the final deadline of 2026. So it's important to learn from the experience. We have talked about the PERTE-BEC and the second call, how this was improved. So we need to coordinate, we need to collaborate among all the stakeholders, whether private, public, social, institutional, that want to participate in the implementation of the plan, because there are many important investments to be done in the coming 2 years. And all these actions can accelerate the investment in transformative actions, and there are certain reforms also that need to be carried out. Next generation 2.0. Well, with regards our assessment at this point, we have already mentioned the positive areas of the RRP that could be taken into account for the next commission. As you know, we have European elections in the month of June, and there will be a change, and they will be the ones who will decide about Next Gen EU 2.0. But the idea of connecting investments and results seems to be quite positive. The payment based on results, milestones, and objectives, and not only through the certification of the expenditures, seems to be very useful as well. And we have several examples, as the one that we have heard from the third sector in this panel. And the topic of connecting the expenditure to European level goals and European level priorities, in our opinion, can contribute to boost investments and reforms within the member states that promote social cohesion, economic cohesion, that is necessary and that is part of the Treaty of the European Union. Well, thank you very much, Maria Teresa. So it's very clear there's no pushing the deadline, but okay, maybe there's a door open for the next Gen 2.0. Regarding the takeaways, I think there are takeaways for everyone: the need of involving the private sector, the third sector, and these are things that have been done, but we can push them further. Also, learnings for the European Commission. It's important to acknowledge this in these assessment. Also, the things related with the skill building. I think we have still a few minutes. And I would like to open a Q&A. I think we have time for 2 questions. Are there any questions from the audience? Or maybe everything is crystal clear for you?
Nadie quiere preguntar.
Nobody has a question for our panelists. Not even Antonio Maqueda. I see. We're afraid we cannot hear without a microphone. It's been very clear that the deadline is 2026, but many formulas are being looked at in order to extend these funds. Do you think there are any potential ways of exceeding those that deadline, maybe by providing funds to the certain institutions so that this deadline can be extended? Well, the deadline is half 2026. All member states need to present their request for payment by the end of that year. And I think that all those investments and reforms need to have been accomplished by that date. So flexibility is exactly what is going to be provided by ICO with the financial instruments. By mid-2026, they will have signed the agreements with the beneficiaries, and this money will be used past the deadline. And this is one of the flexibility points that Spain is using coming from the addenda in order to extend, in a way, this deadline. I will talk about the loans. The date of 31st of August 2026 is a date that has been set by the Commission and not the members and the member states. This is not something that can be negotiated bilaterally between the regional governments or the states and the European Commission. This is regarding the loans and the credits. Everything needs to have been clarified and formalized before August 2026, the 31st of August of that year. There's something we need to take into account. For instance, an operation of 300 million for the manufacturing of certain rolling stock for the railway sector needs to be signed before the 31st of August. But then the disbursement will be carried out over several years for the final beneficiary, but we will have signed it in full before the 31st of August of 2026. Later on, depending on there being loans or capital investments, there will be amortizations of such loans and disinvestments of the hedge funds that, as you know, they have an investment period of 5 years, and disinvestment of other 5 years. and these money will be invested in new operations in the future. Did I answer that? Did I contribute well to your question? Well, thank you very much. I think we are wrapping this up. Hi, if I have the opportunity of asking a question, since you have opened the door for us journalists, I come from ABC, the newspaper ABC. I would like to ask the panelists who are closely related to the handling of the funds, if you think that the regulatory framework that we have enables us to execute all the funds before the 31st of August, or if you think that there will be certain regulatory changes in order to speed up the execution of these funds by the member states. Well, that is Mercedes. Well, thank you for this question. In the Royal Decree 36/2020, we made a great effort to simplify things. We need to take into account that when people ask for us to simplify things, a great deal of the regulations that we apply, and especially derived of the contracting and hiring and aspects, we do not have a lot of margin. We created emergency procedures to move faster, but we cannot delete certain requirements because we would be putting at risk the contracting system at a level, at a European level. So the regulatory effort was already made in this royal decree, and and Maite has repeated what the final date is, but what options do we have then? I think that the European Commission is also learning from the structural funds. Since we have a system for certifying the expenditure, reprogramming things is easier because you can certify up to here, and what you have not spent, you can reprogram it. When we are dealing with milestones and objectives, we need to do this reprogramming, but there's a part of the funds that has been already used. But there are certain things that can be reprogrammed, and I think that the Commission is being very flexible when it comes to reprogramming certain elements that can be more complicated, more complex. So reprogramming is something that is we see frequently coming from the European funds, depending on the objectives and the milestones. And in the addenda, we also presented some milestones that needed to be reformed. And this is the path to follow, always taking into account the constraints, the limitations, and the deadlines that have already been set and that are unmovable. But this is the path to go. Thank you very much. I think this is time for us to close this, and thank you to the European Commission. I think that we have done many things in the past 3 years, but there are a lot of things to do yet. There are lessons that we can learn, that we have learned already, and we need to implement. But the main takeaway here is that at all administration levels and the entities of the different sectors in Spain, we're all very grateful for this facility. And from the side of Spain, we can say that we would welcome a Next Gen 2.0 and a Next Gen 100.0.
Director de la Comisión Europea en España. Gracias.
Bueno, pues muchísimas gracias a todos.
Thank you very much, everyone. It is great to see that the room is still as full as this morning, more or less. This means that the event has been very interesting. I'm going to be very brief. I just want to remind you of some of the key messages that we have heard this morning. First session on the green transition, large volume of funds, the importance with regard to the economic growth, also the need for maintaining the pace for this just transition. Second session on competitiveness, the large competitiveness projects. We've mentioned 2026 as the final date. This has been highlighted many times. And then also the role of the third sector in the last panel, the public-private partnerships, the need to maintain the rhythm of financing, the role of ECO, and the important role played by SMEs. Finally, I would like to end by thanking all of the organizers of this event, Maria, Bea, Anna, who are here today. They are responsible for the organization of this event, together with the teams of the representation of the European Commission. And finally, we will end the event with a video from Valdis Dombrovskis, who is the EC Executive Vice President responsible for an economy that works for people. Thank you.
Honorable Minister, Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me to speak at your second annual event on Spain's Recovery and Resilience Plan. I regret that I cannot be in person with you today. As you know, the Recovery and Resilience Facility, as well as Spain's RRP, have reached the middle of their journey. Spain has already achieved a good deal with its plan. Today you have already discussed how the RRP is boosting Spain's green transition and competitiveness of its industry. To receive its first 3 payments, Spain put a number of reforms in place that are paving way for a more competitive and innovative economy and more inclusive society. Take the labor market reform. Since it was adopted in December 2021, the overall share of temporary employees in Spain has fallen by 9 percentage points. This has more than halved Spain's gap to compare with EU average. Other reforms are now being implemented and should produce results soon. They include a reform on vocational education and training, as well as legal frameworks to promote startups and make it easier for firms to grow. Investments are making their mark too. Here, the Spain's plan represents 12% of its GDP. This includes 83 billion in loans and the rollout of several instruments that will transfer advantageous EU lending conditions to the private sector. For example, 20 billion euros will go to the Regional Resilience Fund to incentivize private investment and improve access to finance in Spanish autonomous communities in priority areas. To date, more than 30 billion in RRF investments have been awarded to beneficiaries by the national and regional authorities. This money is used to fund projects in many key areas, such as Spain digital and green transformations, and to boost your competitiveness. However, while Spain can be proud of what has been achieved, there are some major challenges to face. All required reforms and investments should be in place by the end of 2026. As with other member states, Spain needs to pick up momentum with the implementation of RRP. This applies to investments and to gathering the support needed to enact ambitious reforms that the country needs. I hope that today's discussions have helped. Several key legislative milestones will need to be met in the coming months, such as a tax reform. This is particularly important given the need to further progress in bringing public debt levels down and rebuild fiscal buffers after the pandemic. Other upcoming reforms will include support for families, social services, health systems, industrial policy, and water management. They should help Spain to address challenges such as child poverty, aging, droughts, as well as strengthen its industrial base. I also would like to mention the vital role played by the social dialogue. The Spanish government successfully involved social partners in its labor market reforms. I sincerely hope that this engagement will continue, including to preserve the agreements that were found. It is vital that regions are closely involved in the next steps for implementing the RRP after it was revised last year. National authorities should make sure that this happens, and all regions and local entities should step up their efforts to put the RRP into effect. Ladies and gentlemen, for Spain, 2024 will be a significant year. Not only do you have to accelerate a massive investment and reform agenda financed by the RRF, you also have to design and embark on medium-term fiscal structural plan under the EU's new economic governance rules. For this new endeavor, an effective implementation of the Recovery and Resilience Facility commitments and broad ownership will also be valuable assets. With this in mind, let me conclude by thanking all of you for taking part of today's conference. National, regional and local authorities, social partners, civil society, businesses large and small, financial institutions, think tanks and academia. You are all essential for making Spain's RRP a success on the ground. What you are now achieving together with this plan does not only matter for Spain and for Spain's future generations. It matters for the European Union as a whole. I wish you all the best for the many steps that still need to be taken. You can rely on us to assist you. Thank you.